They said an Alpha King doesn't bleed. They lied. I watched Draven Kaelthorn tear through 6 armed men with his bare hands before the silver blade found his ribs. Blood hit the snow. Black, thick, royal. And in that moment, I realized saving a wolf cub would cost me everything I thought I knew about monsters. This is the story of how a healer became a queen and how a king learned that mercy is the most dangerous weapon of all. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button. And drop your city in the comments so I know my tribe is listening.
Schönen night.
The forest had rules. Stay inside the boundary stones after dark. Never follow wolf tracks deeper than the old pine. And if you hear howling that sounds almost human, run. Seraphina Vale broke all 3 that night. The snow fell heavy through the black branches, muffling her boots as she moved between the trees. Her leather satchel knocked against her hip with each step, glass vials clinking softly. Blood trail. Fresh. Leading east toward the forbidden lands where the wolves ruled and humans became prey. She should have turned back. The cub's cry cut through the silence like a blade. High-pitched, desperate, wrong. Seraphina's breath misted in the freezing air as she pushed through a wall of frost-covered brambles. Her fingers were already numb inside her gloves. The cry came again. Weaker this time, and she moved faster, ignoring the way the trees seemed to lean inward like they were trying to swallow the path behind her. Then she saw it. The wolf cub hung suspended in a silver trap, the kind southern hunters used on bigger game. Its small body twisted against the metal jaws clamped around its hind leg. Dark blood matted the gray fur, steaming where it dripped onto the snow. But it was the eyes that stopped her cold. Golden, bright, intelligent. Not the dull yellow of a common wolf. These eyes tracked her movement with an awareness that made her skin prickle. Seraphina dropped to her knees beside the trap, already reaching for the release mechanism. The cub snarled, baring tiny fangs, but she'd handled worse. Her fingers found the pressure points on either side of the steel jaws. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub's snarl faded to a whimper. She pressed hard, muscles straining, and the jaws opened with a metallic shriek that echoed through the trees. The cub collapsed into the snow, panting. Silver burns wrapped around its leg in angry red welts, the kind that would kill a normal wolf within hours. Seraphina pulled a clay jar from her satchel. The salve inside smelled like mint and old earth, a recipe her grandmother had taught her before she died. Before the villagers started calling their bloodline cursed. She worked quickly, spreading the mixture over the burns while the cub lay still, watching her with those impossible golden eyes. Its breathing steadied. The shaking stopped. "There," Seraphina said softly. "That should hold until—" The howl ripped through the night, deep, primal, close. Every muscle in her body locked. That wasn't a wolf. That was something older, something that made wolves seem like house dogs. The cub's ears pricked up, and it released a small answering cry that vibrated in Seraphina's chest like a second heartbeat. She stood slowly, scanning the darkness between the trees. Nothing moved. The forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no animals, just the sound of her own pulse hammering in her ears. Then the shadows shifted. He emerged from the tree line like smoke-given form, moving with a predator's grace that made her legs want to run even as her brain screamed at her to stay perfectly still. Tall, broad-shouldered, human-shaped but wrong in ways she couldn't name. The man stopped 10 feet away. No, not a man. His eyes burned gold in the darkness, the same impossible shade as the cub's. Black hair fell past his shoulders, tangled with snow and ice. He wore dark leather and fur that looked like it had been torn from something that died badly, and when he breathed, frost formed in the air like dragon smoke. Seraphina's hand moved to the knife at her belt. "Don't!" His voice rolled through the clearing like distant thunder. American accent, but rough, like he'd learned to speak by swallowing gravel. "You'll be dead before it clears the sheath." She believed him. The man's gaze dropped to the cub, then to the open silver trap, then back to her face. Something flickered in those burning eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "You freed him," he said. Not a question. "He was dying," Seraphina said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "The silver, I know what silver does." He moved forward, and she forced herself not to step back. He crouched beside the cub, examining the burns with careful fingers. The cub nuzzled into his palm, whimpering. When he looked up at her again, his expression had changed, harder, colder, dangerous. "Do you know who I am?" Seraphina's mouth went dry. She knew. God help her, she knew. The stories her grandmother told came flooding back. The Alpha King who ruled the northern territories. The monster who'd killed 100 men in a single night. The legend that parents used to frighten children into obedience. "Draven Kaelthorn," she whispered. His smile was all teeth. "Good. Then you understand the situation." "I don't." "This cub," he said, standing, "is Prince Lucien, heir to the Varethon Empire. My nephew." He paused, letting that sink in. "And you just saved his life with herbs and magic that reek of the old bloodlines, the ones we thought were extinct." The forest spun. Seraphina's grandmother had warned her. Never let them know what you are. Never let them see the magic. Never give them a reason to look too close. "I'm just a healer," she said. "You're a liar." Draven closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He towered over her, radiating heat and menace. "I can smell it on you. Guardian blood, the kind that hasn't walked this world in 3 generations. His hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could move. The contact hit like lightning. Seraphina gasped as something ancient and electric surged between them, racing up her arm and into her chest. Draven's eyes widened, his grip tightening. "What?" he started. The bond snapped into place. Not complete, not permanent, but there. A thread of recognition that whispered this was always meant to happen. Draven released her like she'd burned him. They stood there, both breathing hard, staring at each other in the falling snow. "No," he said, voice rough. "That's not possible." Seraphina's heart threatened to break through her ribs. "What just happened?" He didn't answer. Instead, he bent down, scooping the injured cub into his arms with surprising gentleness. Lucien whined, pressing against his chest. "Come with me," Draven said. "I can't—" "That wasn't a request." His eyes burned into hers. "You saved the heir to my empire. That means you're under my protection now. And my scrutiny." He turned toward the deeper woods. "If you run, I'll find you. If you hide, I'll hunt you. And if you refuse, I'll carry you myself." "You can't just—" He looked back over his shoulder, and the expression on his face stopped her protest dead. "I'm the Alpha King," he said quietly. "I can do anything I want." Then he walked into the darkness, and after a long moment of standing alone in the snow, with her whole world crumbling, Seraphina followed. Hatshepsut. The palace rose from the mountain like a black tooth. Seraphina had seen it from a distance before, a dark smudge against the northern sky that the villagers avoided looking at directly. Up close, it was worse. Obsidian walls that seemed to drink the moonlight, towers that clawed at the clouds, windows that glowed with orange firelight, but somehow still looked cold. She walked 3 steps behind Draven through gates that opened without a sound. Guards lined the courtyard, wolves in human skin wearing leather and steel. They watched her pass with hungry eyes that made her skin crawl. She kept her gaze forward, following the Alpha King's broad back through corridors that smelled like smoke and old blood. No one spoke. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. They climbed stairs carved from stone so black it looked wet. Draven still carried Lucien, who'd fallen asleep against his shoulder, small body rising and falling with each breath. Finally, they reached a set of carved wooden doors. Draven kicked them open. The room beyond was warm. A fire roared in a massive hearth, casting dancing shadows across walls hung with furs and weapons. A woman sat in a chair near the flames, her silver hair braided down her back. She stood when they entered, her face going pale. "Lucien," she breathed. "He's alive," Draven said, crossing to her. "Silver trap, eastern boundary." The woman took the cub with shaking hands, examining the bandaged leg. Her eyes, the same gold as Draven's, filled with tears. "The hunters," she whispered. "They're getting bolder. They're getting dead." Draven's voice could have cut glass. "I want every trap between here and the southern border destroyed by dawn. I want the hunters who set them brought to me alive." He paused. "Mostly alive." The woman nodded, still cradling Lucien. Then her gaze shifted to Seraphina, standing awkwardly near the door. "Who is this?" "The healer who saved him," Draven said. "She has guardian blood." The woman's expression transformed. Fear. Wonder. Something else Seraphina couldn't name. "That's impossible," she said. "Apparently not." Draven turned to face Seraphina fully. "This is my sister, Lady Celeste, Lucien's mother." His eyes narrowed. "And you're going to tell us exactly what you are." Seraphina's throat tightened. "I already said—" "Your name," Celeste interrupted gently. "Start there." "Seraphina Vale. Vale." Celeste's breath caught. "As in the Vale family, the Boundary Keepers?" She didn't want to answer, didn't want to open this door. But Draven's eyes pinned her in place like a butterfly on a board. "My grandmother," Seraphina said finally. "She was the last." "Was?" "She died 5 years ago. The villagers said it was fever." She paused. "But I found the silver powder in her tea." Silence fell like an axe. Draven's expression darkened. They murdered her. They were afraid. Seraphina's hands clenched into fists. The old magic frightened them. She could do things, heal wounds that should have killed, read the boundary storms, speak to the forest. She looked at Celeste. "They said our family made a pact with demons, that we were cursed." "Not cursed," Celeste said softly. "Chosen." "For what?" No one answered. Draven crossed to a table near the window, pouring dark liquid from a crystal decanter. He downed it in one swallow, then poured another. "The Guardian bloodline," he said finally, "was bound to the Alpha Kings 300 years ago. A treaty written in magic and blood. Your ancestors protected the boundary between our world and theirs. In exchange, we protected them." He turned, glass dangling from his fingers. But the magic faded. The Guardians died out. We thought the line was broken. "It wasn't," Seraphina said. "No." His smile was bitter. Apparently it was just hiding in a cottage, brewing tea and pretending to be human. Heat flared in her chest. "I am human. You're something more." He moved closer, and she hated how her body reacted, how every nerve lit up when he invaded her space. "The salve you used on Lucien, that was old magic, the kind that doesn't exist anymore. My grandmother taught me." "Your grandmother was the last guardian." Celeste's voice was quiet but firm. "Which means you're the only one left." She looked at her brother. "Draven, you know what this means." His jaw tightened. "I know." "What?" Seraphina looked between them. "What does it mean?" Neither answered. The fire crackled. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. Then Draven set down his glass with a sharp click. "It means," he said, "that you're not leaving this palace." Her blood turned to ice. "You can't keep me here." "I can. I will." He crossed his arms. "There's a war coming, Seraphina. The hunters aren't just setting traps for sport. They're organized, funded, armed with weapons designed specifically to kill us." His eyes burned. "And someone inside my own kingdom is helping them." "That's not my problem." "It became your problem the moment you saved my heir." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. "You have guardian magic. That makes you either the most valuable asset I have or the most dangerous threat." "I'm not a threat to anyone." "Then prove it." His voice dropped. "Stay. Help us find the traitors. Use your magic to protect what's left of my family." "And if I refuse?" The smile that crossed his face was sharp enough to draw blood. "Then I'll assume you're working with them," he said softly, "and I'll treat you accordingly." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Seraphina's mind raced, looking for exits that didn't exist. She could run, try to disappear into the forest, but he'd find her. He'd said so himself. And if he thought she was an enemy— "How long?" she asked. "Until we root out the conspiracy." He paused. "Or until you die trying." "Draven," Celeste said sharply, "that's enough. It's the truth." He didn't look away from Seraphina. "I don't deal in comfortable lies. You want to know what you're stepping into? Fine. There are nobles in my court who smile at me during dinner and plot my death before dessert. There are hunters who skin wolves alive and hang the pelts as trophies. There are weapons being smuggled through my borders that could wipe out my entire bloodline. His eyes glittered. And somewhere in this palace, someone I trust is feeding them information. The weight of it settled over her like a burial shroud. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why not use your own people?" "Because my own people might be the enemy." His expression softened, just slightly. "But you? You're an outsider. You have no allegiance to the noble houses, no political debts, no reason to betray me. Except that you're holding me prisoner. I prefer the term protective custody. I prefer freedom." He laughed, short and sharp. "Freedom is a myth, Seraphina. We're all prisoners of something. Blood, duty, fate." He moved past her toward the door. "At least here, you'll have a comfortable cell." She wanted to scream, to fight, to do anything but stand there and accept this. But what choice did she have? Draven paused at the door, looking back. "Celeste will show you to your quarters. Food will be brought. If you need anything, ask." His eyes met hers one final time. "And Seraphina, don't try to run. The wolves outside aren't as merciful as I am." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a sound like a tomb sealing. Seraphina stood there, shaking. Celeste approached slowly, still holding Lucienne. "He's not as cruel as he pretends to be." "Could have fooled me. My brother has ruled through fear and strength for 15 years. It's kept us alive when gentler kings would have fallen." She stroked Lucien's fur. "But he's right about the danger. Something is rotting in Verathon, and if we don't cut it out soon, we'll all burn." "What do you want from me?" Celeste's smile was sad. "The same thing Draven wants. The same thing we've always wanted." She looked down at her sleeping son. "To survive. Become." The quarters they gave her were a cage dressed in silk. A massive bed dominated the center of the room, piled with furs and pillows. A fireplace warmed stone walls hung with tapestries depicting wolves hunting under a full moon. Windows looked out over the mountain, barred with iron that gleamed like bones. Seraphina paced. A servant had brought food an hour ago. Roasted meat, fresh bread, wine that smelled like cherries and smoke. She hadn't touched it. Her stomach was a knot of fear and anger. She was trapped. The realization kept hitting her in waves, trapped in a palace full of predators, trapped by an Alpha King who looked at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve, trapped by magic in her blood she didn't understand and didn't want. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Never let them see what you are." Too late for that. She moved to the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. Below, the palace grounds spread out in shadows and firelight. Wolves moved between buildings, some in human form, some not. Patrolling, hunting, watching. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. The door opened. A young woman entered carrying folded cloth. She looked barely 20, with dark skin and nervous eyes that didn't quite meet Seraphina's. "Clothes," she said quietly. "Lady Celeste thought you might want something warmer." Seraphina took the bundle. Soft wool, clean. "Thank you." The girl nodded, already backing toward the door. "Wait," Seraphina said. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Mira." "How long have you worked here, Mira?" 3 years. Her eyes darted to the hallway. "I should go. They don't like us talking to—" She stopped. "To prisoners?" Mira's silence was answer enough. "It's okay," Seraphina said. "I understand." But as the girl left, closing the door softly behind her, Seraphina realized she didn't understand anything anymore. She changed into the new clothes, grateful for the warmth. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the fire. Hours passed. The palace grew quiet. She must have dozed off because when the scream cut through the night, she jerked awake with her heart trying to break through her chest. Another scream, closer, then shouting, the clash of metal on metal. Seraphina ran to the door, yanking it open. The hallway beyond was chaos. Servants fled past in terror. Guards rushed toward the sound of fighting, weapons drawn. "What's happening?" she shouted at a passing guard. He didn't even look at her. "Assassins, lock your door!" But she didn't lock her door. She ran toward the screams, toward the sounds of battle, following some instinct she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The corridor opened into a grand hall, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and blood, so much blood. Bodies lay scattered across the stone. some in servant's clothes, some in guard's armor, all of them torn apart. In the center of it all, Draven fought like a god of war made flesh. 3 attackers circled him, moving with inhuman speed. They wore dark leather and masks, but she could see the glint of silver in their hands, blades that shimmered with poison. Draven moved like water and lightning. He caught one attacker by the throat, slamming him into a pillar hard enough to crack stone. Spun, drove his elbow into another's face, blood sprayed. But he was slower than he should be. She saw it in the way he favored his left side, in the dark stain spreading across his ribs. He'd been cut. Silver poison. The 3rd attacker saw the opening and lunged, blade aimed at Draven's heart. Seraphina didn't think. Her hand shot out, and something inside her snapped open like a door she'd kept locked her entire life. Power flooded through her veins, ancient and terrible and right. The air between her and the attacker ignited, not with fire, with something else. Green light that crackled like storm and smelled like earth after rain. The attacker flew backward, hitting the wall with a wet crunch. Silence fell. Draven stared at her, eyes wide. Blood dripped from his mouth. His shirt was soaked through, the silver poison spreading like black veins under his skin. "You," he started. Then his legs gave out. Seraphina caught him before he hit the ground, staggering under his weight. He was burning up, skin hot enough to scorch. "Get Celeste," she snapped at the guards pouring into the hall. "Now." They hesitated, looking at her like she'd grown a second head. "I said now." They ran. Seraphina lowered Draven to the floor, her hands already moving to the wound in his side. The silver had poisoned the flesh around it, turning it black. His breathing came in short gasps. "Stupid," she muttered, tearing his shirt open. "Stupid, arrogant, impossible." His hand caught her wrist. "You're glowing," he said, voice rough. She looked down. He was right. Her hands pulsed with that same green light, brighter now, responding to the poison in his blood. "Don't talk," she said. "Save your strength." "Did you just give me an order?" Despite the pain, his smile was sharp. "That's treason, healer." "Then execute me later." She pressed her glowing hands against the wound. The magic flowed out of her like water through a broken dam. She felt it burning through his veins, hunting the poison, devouring it. Draven's back arched, a sound between a growl and a scream tearing from his throat. "Hold still," she gritted out. "Easy for you to say." The poison fought back. She could feel it, oily and wrong, trying to dig deeper into his body. But her magic was older, stronger. It wrapped around the silver, pulling it out like a surgeon extracting shrapnel. Draven's hand tightened on her wrist, claws extending, drawing blood. She didn't stop. Can't stop. The poison came free in a rush of black smoke that dissipated in the air. The wound in his side began to close, flesh knitting together. Seraphina sagged, the magic draining out of her like life itself. "Seraphina," Draven said. She looked down at him. His eyes were pure gold now, burning so bright they hurt to look at. And in them she saw recognition, understanding, terror. "The bond," he whispered. "It's activating." "What bond?" But before he could answer, footsteps thundered down the hall. Celeste burst into the room, Lucienne in her arms, guards surrounding her. She took one look at Draven on the floor, at Seraphina's glowing hands, at the dead assassins scattered like broken dolls. "Oh no," she breathed. "Oh no, no, no." "What?" Seraphina's voice cracked. "What's happening?" Celeste's eyes filled with tears. "The prophecy," she said. "The one we thought was just a story." She looked at her brother. "Draven, tell me I'm wrong." But he just stared at Seraphina with an expression she couldn't read. "You're not wrong," he said quietly. "Someone tell me what's going on," Seraphina shouted. Draven sat up slowly, touching the place where the wound had been. Perfect skin, no scar. He looked at her with eyes that held centuries of history and pain. 300 years ago, he said, the first Alpha King bound his soul to a guardian. They became one. 2 halves of the same power. Together they were unstoppable. He paused. But when the guardian died, the bond tried to kill the king. It nearly destroyed the entire empire. Her blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the moment you saved Lucian, the magic recognized you. And when you healed me just now, you activated something that hasn't existed in 3 centuries. His voice was rough. You and I are bonding, Seraphina. Our souls are starting to merge. That's impossible. Tell that to your hands. She looked down. The green light was fading, but she could still feel it beneath her skin. Waiting, growing, reaching toward him like a living thing. Can we stop it? She whispered. The silence that followed was answer enough. The bond is ancient magic, Celeste said quietly. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. It either completes or... She trailed off. Or what? Seraphina demanded. Draven's smile was bitter. Or it tears us both apart trying. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Seraphina wanted to scream, to run, to wake up in her cottage and discover this was all a nightmare. But the magic humming in her veins, the exhaustion dragging at her bones, the way Draven's eyes tracked her every movement, it was all horrifyingly real. How long? She asked. Until it completes? Depends on how much we resist. Draven stood, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd just been dying moments before. Could be weeks. Could be days. His eyes met hers. Could be hours. And if we don't resist, then we become what our ancestors were. His voice dropped. Mated, bound, one soul in 2 bodies. He paused. Forever. The word echoed through the hall like a bell tolling. Forever. Bound to a king she didn't know, to a man who'd imprisoned her, to a monster who ruled through fear and blood and power. No, she said. There has to be another way. There isn't. Celeste's voice was gentle but firm. I've read every text in our library, studied every record of the old bonds. Once it activates, there's no going back. Then we fight it, Seraphina said desperately. We resist until we both die screaming, Draven interrupted. That's what happened to the last pair who tried. He moved closer, and she felt the pull even as she wanted to run. The bond doesn't care what we want, healer. It only cares about completing itself. This isn't fair. Fair? He laughed, sharp and bitter. You think anything about our lives is fair? You think I chose to be born into a bloodline that demands I rule through violence? You think I wanted to watch my father die because he was too gentle, too kind, too weak? His eyes burned. We don't get choices, Seraphina. We get consequences. Stop it, Celeste said quietly. Both of you. But Seraphina was shaking now, the reality of it crashing down. I can't do this. I can't be bound to someone I don't... She stopped. Someone you don't what? Draven asked. Know, trust, love? His smile was sharp enough to cut. Good. Because I don't want those things from you. I want you alive. I want your magic protecting my family. Everything else is just... He waved a hand. Noise. It should have made her feel better. It didn't. Because somewhere deep inside, in a place she didn't want to examine, a small voice whispered that maybe she wanted to be more than just a weapon, more than just a tool. My lord, one of the guards interrupted quietly, the assassins, should we... Burn them, Draven said without looking away from Seraphina. After you strip them. I want to know who they worked for. And the other matter? His jaw tightened. What other matter? The guard shifted uncomfortably. The council demands an emergency session. They're saying the attack proves the palace isn't secure. They want answers. They want blood, Draven corrected. Fine. Tell them we meet at dawn. He finally looked away from Seraphina. And tell them their Alpha King is very much alive. The guard bowed and left. Silence fell again. Celeste, Draven said, take Lucien to your quarters. Double the guards. No one in or out except people I personally approve. And you? I need to think. He rubbed his face. And apparently bond with a woman who hates me. I don't hate you, Seraphina said before she could stop herself. They both looked at her in surprise. I don't know you well enough to hate you, she continued quietly. But I don't want this. I don't want my life decided by ancient magic I don't understand. Neither do I, Draven said. And for the first time she heard something like vulnerability in his voice. But we don't always get what we want. Celeste gathered Lucien closer, heading for the door. She paused beside Seraphina, touching her arm gently. He's not what you think, she said quietly. Give him a chance. Then she was gone, leaving Seraphina alone with the Alpha King in a hall painted with blood. Draven moved to one of the windows, staring out at the darkness. You should rest, he said. Tomorrow will be worse. How could it possibly be worse? He looked back at her, and his expression made her breath catch. Because tomorrow, he said, the council meets. And when they find out about the bond, about what you are, they'll either try to use you as a weapon, he paused, or kill you as a threat. Her legs threatened to give out. They can't. They can. They will. Unless I stop them. His eyes glowed in the darkness. Which means you need to trust me, Seraphina, even though every instinct you have is screaming to run, even though you hate being here, even though the bond terrifies you. He crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could feel his heat. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him to go to hell, but the magic inside her sang when he was near, reached for him like a plant reaching for the sun. And she knew in her bones that fighting it would destroy them both. I don't have a choice, she whispered. No, he agreed. Neither of us do. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. The air between them crackled with unfinished magic. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for all of this. For dragging you into a war you didn't ask for the bond, for... He stopped. For what I'm about to become. What do you mean? But he just shook his head, dropping his hand. Get some rest, Seraphina, while you still can. Then he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the blood-soaked hall with her whole world burning down around her. She didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the bond pulling, reaching, trying to drag her consciousness toward his. It was like standing on a cliff edge in a hurricane, fighting not to fall. By the time dawn light crept through her barred windows, she was exhausted. A knock at the door made her jump. Mira entered without waiting for permission, carrying a tray of food and a bundle of clothes. The council meets in an hour, she said quietly. Lord Draven requests your presence. Requests? Orders. Mira set down the tray. These are formal clothes. You'll need to look... She hesitated. Presentable. Seraphina looked at the outfit. Black and silver, expensive fabric, cut to fit. I'm not one of them. Today you are. Mira's eyes were sympathetic. I'm sorry, but if you walk into that council chamber looking like an outsider, they'll eat you alive. And if I walk in looking like I belong, they'll still eat you alive, Mira admitted, just slower. Despite everything, Seraphina almost smiled. She ate sparingly, then dressed in the formal clothes. They fit perfectly, which meant someone had taken her measurements while she slept. The thought made her skin crawl. Mira helped with her hair, braiding it back in a style Seraphina had never worn. You look like a queen, the girl said quietly. I'm a prisoner. Sometimes that's the same thing. Before Seraphina could respond, the door opened. Draven stood in the hallway, dressed in black leather and fur that made him look like death in human form. His eyes swept over her, and something flickered in their depths. Good, he said. You'll do. I'm so glad I have your approval, she said dryly. His smile was sharp. Come. The wolves are hungry, and I'd rather they bite each other than you. He led her through corridors that grew progressively grander. More guards, more weapons, more eyes watching every step. They reached a set of massive doors carved with wolves and moons. Listen carefully, Draven said quietly. The council is made up of the oldest noble families in Verathon. They advise me. They also hate me, some openly, some quietly. All of them want more power. He looked at her. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Don't react to anything they say. And whatever you do, don't show fear. Why? Because fear is blood in the water, he said, and they're all sharks. Then he pushed open the doors. The council chamber was circular, ringed with seats rising in tiers. 12 nobles sat in those seats, men and women in expensive clothes with eyes that tracked Draven like predators watching prey. At the center of the room stood a raised platform. Draven walked to it without hesitation, and Seraphina followed, feeling every eye shift to her. The whispers started immediately. Who is that? Why is a human here? Is that the healer? Draven raised one hand and silence fell like an axe. My lords and ladies, he said. His voice carried through the chamber without effort. Thank you for gathering on short notice. We demand answers, one of the nobles said. An older man with silver hair and cold eyes. 4 assassins breached the palace. 8 of our people are dead. This is unacceptable. I agree, Draven said calmly, which is why I've tripled the guard and initiated a full investigation. That's not enough. A woman this time, sharp-featured and dressed in deep blue. We need to know how they got in, who hired them, and why your nephew was specifically targeted. All excellent questions, Draven said. I have people working on answers. And her? The woman's gaze slid to Seraphina. Who is she? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Draven didn't hesitate. This is Seraphina Vale, guardian, healer, and under my personal protection. The explosion of voices hit like a physical force. Guardian? That's impossible. The bloodline is extinct. You brought an outsider into the palace during a crisis? Draven waited for the noise to die down. Seraphina saved Prince Lucien's life, he said, and last night she saved mine. She has proven her value and her loyalty. Loyalty? The silver-haired man stood. She's been here less than a day. How can you possibly claim? Because, Draven interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. She's bonded to me. The silence that followed was absolute. Bonded? Someone whispered. The ancient bond? Yes. That's... The woman in blue looked genuinely shaken. My lord, do you understand what you're saying? Perfectly. Draven's eyes swept the room. The guardian bloodline has returned. The bond is awakening. And whether you like it or not, Seraphina is now part of this empire. This is madness, the silver-haired man said. The last bond nearly destroyed us. You're willing to risk that again? I'm willing to use every weapon I have, Draven countered, including ancient magic. And what if she betrays you? Then I'll kill her myself. The casual way he said it made Seraphina's blood run cold. But she kept her face neutral, showed nothing. The nobles exchanged glances. There will need to be tests, the woman in blue said finally, to verify her bloodline, to ensure the bond is genuine. Agreed, Draven said, and she stays under guard at all times. She already is. And if the bond fails, it won't, Draven interrupted. His eyes met Seraphina's across the room, burning with something she couldn't name. The magic has already chosen. All that's left is the claiming. More whispers, more stares. Then the silver-haired man spoke again. Very well, my lord. We'll accept your companion. He paused. For now, but know this. If she proves to be a liability, the council will demand action. Noted, Draven said coldly. Is there anything else? Just one thing. The man's smile was thin. When do you plan to complete the bond? The question hung in the air like a blade. Draven's expression didn't change. When the time is right. And when will that be? When I say. The man's eyes narrowed. The longer you wait, the more dangerous it becomes. The partial bond will start to... I know what it will do, Draven snapped. I've read the same text you have. I don't need a lecture on ancient magic from someone whose family has spent 3 centuries trying to forget it existed. The insult landed like a slap. The silver-haired man's face flushed. You overstep, my lord. I'm the Alpha King, Draven said softly. I can't overstep. I can only remind you of your place. The threat in those words was unmistakable. The man sat down, jaw tight. Draven looked around the room one final time. This session is over. You're all dismissed. The nobles filed out slowly, shooting glances at Seraphina as they passed. Some curious, some hostile, all calculating. When the last one left, the doors closed with a boom that echoed. Draven sagged slightly, exhaustion showing through the cracks. That went better than expected, he muttered. Better? Seraphina stared at him. They looked at me like I was a disease. They looked at you like you were powerful, he corrected. That's different. He moved closer. And now they'll spend the next week trying to figure out how to use you against me. Her stomach turned. What do we do? We make sure they can't. He studied her face. How do you feel? Like my life is over. That's fair? His smile was bitter. But for what it's worth, you handled yourself well in there. Most people would have cracked under that kind of pressure. Most people aren't being forced into a magical bond with a king. True. He paused. Seraphina, I need you to understand something. The nobles weren't wrong. The longer we wait to complete the bond, the more dangerous it becomes. The magic will start to fight us. It'll hurt. And if we resist too hard, we die, she finished. Yes. She wrapped her arms around herself. How long do we have? I don't know. Days. Maybe a week. His eyes were honest. I won't force you, but I also won't let us both burn because of pride or fear. So what? We just give in? We survive, he said, however we have to. Before she could respond, the doors burst open. A guard stumbled in, bleeding from a cut above his eye. My lord, he gasped. The Eastern Tower! Another attack! Draven's entire body went rigid. How many? Dozens. They're inside the walls. His eyes flashed gold. Get Celeste and Lucian to the inner sanctum. Now! Already done, my lord. Good. He turned to Seraphina. Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me. I can help. You can die, he interrupted. These aren't random assassins, Seraphina. They're trained hunters with silver weapons and death wishes. His hand caught her arm. Please, for once, just listen to me. The please surprised her. She nodded. Draven released her, already moving toward the door, but he paused at the threshold, looking back. I'll come back for you, he said. I swear it. Then he was gone, running toward the sounds of battle. Seraphina stood alone in the massive chamber, her heart racing. She should lock the doors, should hide, should do exactly what he said. Instead, she followed, because somewhere between the cottage and the palace, between the first touch and the bond awakening, something had changed. She couldn't let him fight alone, couldn't sit in safety while people died. The magic in her blood sang agreement, so she ran through corridors filling with smoke and screams, following the sound of Draven's roar toward whatever nightmare waited in the Eastern Tower. And in the shadows behind her, unseen, something ancient stirred. The bond recognized what she was doing, recognized the choice she'd made, and it began to pull them together faster. The smoke hit her first, thick, oily, wrong. Seraphina ran through corridors that had become a war zone, her lungs burning with each breath. Screams echoed off stone walls. Somewhere ahead, metal clashed against metal in a rhythm that sounded almost like music. Death music. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a body, a guard, young, eyes staring at nothing. His throat had been opened from ear to ear, blood still pooling beneath him. Her stomach lurched, but she kept moving. The Eastern Tower loomed ahead, flames licking from the upper windows. Guards fought desperately at the entrance, holding a line against attackers dressed in black who moved with mechanical precision. Silver flashed in the firelight, more of those poisoned blades. Then she saw him. Draven stood in the center of the carnage like a storm-given form. He'd shifted partially, his face elongated, claws extending from hands that ripped through enemies like they were made of paper. Blood painted him head to toe, his eyes burned pure gold. And he was magnificent, terrifying, absolutely lethal. An attacker came at him from behind, blade aimed at his spine. Seraphina's hand shot out before she could think. The green light exploded from her palm, catching the assassin mid-strike. He flew backward into the wall hard enough to leave a crater. Draven's head snapped toward her. Their eyes met across the battlefield. She felt the bond surge between them, recognizing what she'd just done, protecting him, choosing him. The magic roared approval through her veins. Get back, he mouthed, like hell. She moved forward, power crackling around her fingers. Another attacker rushed her. She caught him with a blast that sent him skidding across blood-slick stone. The magic came easier now, responding to her will like it had been waiting her entire life to be unleashed. Draven fought his way toward her, cutting through enemies with brutal efficiency. 3 assassins moved to intercept him. Seraphina threw her hands forward, and vines erupted from cracks in the stone floor. Old magic, guardian magic. They wrapped around the attackers like serpents, crushing bone and pulling them down. Draven reached her, grabbing her arm. "You shouldn't be here," his voice echoed in her mind. The mental connection startled her so badly she almost lost focus. "Neither should they," she shot back, surprised she could do this. His smile was all teeth and blood. Fair point. They fought back to back, moving in sync like they'd trained together for years instead of hours. The bond fed them each other's instincts. When he moved left, she covered right. When she struck, he defended. It was terrifying how natural it felt. The attackers started to retreat, realizing they were losing. After them, Draven commanded the guards. But Seraphina grabbed his arm. "Wait. What?" She pointed to the tower entrance. "Look at the pattern. They're not retreating, they're hurting." His eyes narrowed, scanning the scene. Then his expression darkened. Trap. The explosion ripped through the eastern wing like the fist of an angry god. Stone and fire erupted outward. Guards screamed. The shockwave threw Seraphina backward into Draven's chest. He caught her, spinning them both behind a pillar as debris rained down. When the dust settled, half the tower was gone. And inside the smoking ruins, shadows moved. "Something else is coming," Draven said. "Something worse." He was right. From the destruction emerged a figure that made every instinct Seraphina had scream-run. Tall, impossibly thin, wearing robes that seemed to drink the light. Where its face should be was just shadow and the gleam of too many teeth. "Wraith," Draven breathed. "How did they get a wraith?" "What is it?" "Old magic. Corrupted. It eats souls." He pushed her behind him. "When I say run, you run. Understand? I'm not leaving you." "Seraphina," the wraith screamed. The sound bypassed her ears and went straight into her skull, shredding thought and replacing it with pure terror. Her knees buckled. Around them, guards collapsed, clutching their heads. Only Draven stayed standing, though blood ran from his nose. The wraith glided forward, and where its robes touched stone, the rock withered and cracked. Draven shifted fully. The transformation was violent, bones snapping and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding. His clothes shredded as he grew, becoming something between man and wolf, towering and terrible. He lunged at the wraith. It caught him mid-leap, impossibly fast, and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crack the stone. Draven's howl of pain echoed through the ruins. "No." Seraphina didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. The magic erupted from her like a dam breaking, green light so bright it turned the smoke-filled air into something almost holy. It hit the wraith square in the chest, and for the first time the creature faltered. It turned its terrible knot face toward her, and smiled. "Oh," it whispered directly into her mind. "A guardian. How delicious." It released Draven and came for her. Seraphina threw everything she had at it. Vines, light, raw power that made her bones ache. But the wraith absorbed it all, growing stronger with each attack. Its hand shot out, catching her throat. The touch was ice and death and emptiness. She felt it starting to pull, drawing something vital out of her chest. Her vision grayed. Then Draven hit the wraith from behind. His claws tore through the shadowy robes, finding something solid beneath. The wraith shrieked, releasing Seraphina. She collapsed, gasping. Draven didn't stop. He ripped and tore with savage fury, each strike fueled by something primal and possessive that made the bond sing. The wraith fought back, landing blows that should have killed him. But he kept coming. Seraphina struggled to her feet, calling the magic again even though it felt like her veins were full of broken glass. "Together," she thought at Draven. "Hit it together." She felt his agreement through the bond. They struck as one. Her power and his merged in a way that shouldn't have been possible, green light wrapping around savage claws. The combined force punched through the wraith's center. It screamed again, but this time the sound was dying. The shadows unraveled, peeling away to reveal something small and shriveled beneath. Draven's claws came down one final time. Silence fell. The wraith was gone. Just ash and the stench of corruption. Draven shifted back to human form, naked and covered in wounds that were already healing. He swayed and Seraphina caught him. They stood there in the ruins, breathing hard, covered in blood and ash. "That was stupid," he said hoarsely. "You're welcome." Despite everything, he laughed. Rough, painful, real. Then his arms came around her, pulling her against his chest. She felt his heart hammering against her ear, felt the bond wrapping tighter with each breath. "Don't do that again," he said into her hair. "Do what?" "Risk yourself for me." She pulled back enough to look at him. His eyes were still gold, but fading back to their usual dark amber. Blood streaked his face. He looked exhausted and dangerous, and something else she didn't want to name. "We're bonded," she said quietly. "Your death is my death now. Right?" He didn't answer. "Right?" she pressed. "Yes," he admitted. Then it wasn't a risk. She touched his chest, feeling the rapid heartbeat beneath. It was survival. Something shifted in his expression, something that made her breath catch. "My lord!" a voice called. They broke apart as Celeste ran toward them, Lucienne in her arms, guards surrounding her. She took one look at the destruction and paled. "Is it dead?" "It's dead," Draven confirmed. "Good. Because we have a bigger problem." She looked between them. "The council just went into emergency session. Without you." His eyes narrowed. "What?" "They're calling for a vote of confidence, claiming you're too focused on your personal interests to properly defend the Empire." She paused. "They want to strip your authority." The silence that followed was deadly. "Let them try," Draven said softly. "Draven, they have the law on their side. If enough of them vote against you, I'll remind them what happens when they forget who rules here." His voice could have cut steel. "Call the full court. Now. Everyone. I want every noble, every minister, every person with a title in that throne room in 1 hour. Are you sure that's wise?" "Wisdom doesn't win wars, sister. Fear does." He looked at Seraphina. "And power, they gave her new clothes. Black leather this time, fitted and reinforced. Combat gear disguised as formal wear. Someone had also left a dagger on the table, silver-hilted and sharp enough to split hairs. Seraphina strapped it to her thigh, feeling the weight. A knock at the door made her turn. Draven entered without waiting for permission. He'd cleaned up, dressed in black and silver that made him look like a king carved from midnight. But his eyes were tired. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I fought a demon and won." "You did." He moved closer. "The wraith should have killed you, would have killed anyone else, but not a guardian, not one bonded to an alpha." He paused. "The magic protected you. It's getting stronger. Is that good or bad?" "Both." His hand lifted, almost touching her face but stopping just short. "Every time we fight together, every time we protect each other, the bond tightens. We're running out of time, Seraphina." She knew. She could feel it. The pull was constant now, a living thing in her chest that ached when they were apart and sang when they were close. "What happens in the throne room?" she asked. "They'll try to break me. Legally, politically. They'll bring up every grievance, every failure, every death under my rule." He smiled without humor. "And they'll use you as evidence that I'm compromised." "How?" "By claiming the bond makes me weak. That I'm putting a woman I barely know above the Empire. That my judgment is clouded by ancient magic and sentiment." "Is it?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Clouded?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally, "but not the way they think." "What does that mean?" "It means I should see you as a tool, a weapon to be used and discarded. That's how a proper Alpha King would handle this." He stepped closer. "But every time I look at you, I see something else, someone else. And it terrifies me." Her heart stuttered. Why? Because the last time an Alpha cared more about a guardian than his throne, the Empire burned. His eyes burned into hers. "I can't let that happen again. I won't." "So what? You're going to use me and throw me away after?" "If I have to." The word should have hurt. Should have made her angry. Instead, they made something inside her go very still. "Then let's make sure you don't have to," she said quietly. His smile was sharp. "How?" "By making them more afraid of us together than they are of you alone." The throne room was packed. Every noble in the Empire stood in their designated sections, arranged by house and rank. Ministers lined the walls. Guards stood at attention every 10 feet. And at the center, raised on a dais of black stone, sat the Alpha throne. Empty. Draven stood before it, not sitting, A deliberate choice. Kings sat. Warriors stood ready. Seraphina stood 3 steps behind him and to the right, close enough to reach, far enough to show she wasn't hiding. The council members sat in their elevated circle, looking down like judges at an execution. The silver-haired man, Lord Maddox, spoke first. "We are gathered to address a crisis of leadership. 4 separate attacks in as many days. Dozens dead. Our defenses compromised, and our Alpha King is distracted by a woman of questionable origin and a bond that hasn't been verified." Draven's expression didn't change. "Are you finished?" "No." Maddox stood. "I'm calling for a formal inquiry into your fitness to rule, specifically whether the partial bond with this guardian has compromised your judgment and, by extension, the safety of this empire." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "And if I refuse your inquiry?" Draven asked mildly. "Then we vote. Simple majority. If we find you unfit, your authority is suspended until the bond is complete or severed. You don't have that power. The law says we do. In times of crisis, the Council can challenge the Alpha if his actions endanger the Empire." Maddox's smile was cold. "I'd say multiple breaches and a mysterious guardian who appeared from nowhere qualify." "Careful," Draven said softly. "You're starting to sound like you have ambitions. I have concern. As should we all." Maddox looked at Seraphina. "This woman used magic we haven't seen in centuries. She claims to be a guardian, but we have only your word. How do we know she's not a plant? A spy sent to infiltrate and destroy us from within?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Seraphina's hands clenched into fists, but she kept her face neutral. "You want proof?" Draven's voice was deadly calm. "Fine." He turned to her, and through the bond she felt his intention. "Show them," he said. "Show them what you are." "How?" "Trust me." She did. She shouldn't have, but she did. Draven drew the knife from his belt. In one smooth motion, he dragged the blade across his palm. Blood welled dark and thick. Gasps echoed through the throne room. He held up his bleeding hand, letting the blood drip onto the black stone. "A guardian bond responds to blood," he said. "Old magic recognizes old magic." He looked at Seraphina. "If she's a fraud, nothing will happen. If she's real—" He left the sentence hanging. Seraphina stepped forward, her heart pounding. She didn't know what he expected, didn't know if this would work. But she placed her hand over his bleeding palm. The bond exploded. Green light erupted from their joined hands, so bright people cried out and shielded their eyes. It spiraled upward, forming shapes in the air. Wolves, trees, ancient symbols that burned themselves into reality. And beneath it all, everyone in the room felt it. The power, the recognition, the truth. When the light faded, Draven's hand was healed. No wound, no scar, just their palms pressed together, her magic humming beneath his skin. The silence was absolute. "Satisfied?" Draven asked Maddox. The old lord's face had gone pale. "That proves she has power. Not that she's loyal. She saved my life, twice." Draven released Seraphina's hand slowly. "She saved my heir. She fought a wraith without hesitation. What more proof do you need?" "Words are cheap. Actions can be staged." Maddox's eyes narrowed. "I want the bond completed. Fully. Now." The demand sent a shock through the room. "You're insane," Celeste said from her place among the crowd. "I'm practical." Maddox looked at Draven. "A partial bond is unstable. Dangerous. If you truly believe she's your guardian, then complete it. Bind yourself fully. Prove to this court that you're willing to put the Empire's stability above your pride. And if I refuse, then we vote on your fitness to rule. Today." Draven's smile was sharp as a blade. "You really think you have the numbers?" "I know I do." Maddox gestured to the other council members. "We've been talking, comparing notes, and we're unified on this. Either complete the bond or step aside until you do." "This is a coup," Celeste said coldly. "This is survival." Maddox never looked away from Draven. "So what's it going to be, my lord? Your throne or your freedom?" The choice hung in the air like a noose. Seraphina felt Draven's fury through the bond, felt him calculating, weighing options, looking for the trap. There wasn't one. This was just politics dressed up as concern. Force him to either complete a bond he wasn't ready for or lose his authority. Either way, they won. Unless... I'll do it, Seraphina said. Every head turned toward her. Draven's voice cracked through her mind. What are you doing? She ignored him, stepping forward to address the council directly. You want the bond completed? Fine. I'll complete it. She looked at Maddox. But not because you ordered it, because it's what needs to happen anyway. Seraphina, Draven warned. She finally looked at him, and through the bond she sent a single thought. Trust me. His eyes searched hers. Then, slowly, he nodded. She turned back to the council. But I have conditions. Conditions? Maddox laughed. You're in no position to... I'm in every position. She let her voice carry. I'm the last guardian, the only one who can complete this bond, which means you need me as much as I need you. Her smile was sharp. So here's what's going to happen. The room went very quiet. First, she said, we do this properly, the old way. Full ceremony in the moon's sanctum beneath the palace. Not some rushed display for your entertainment. Agreed, Lady Celeste said immediately. The old rituals must be honored. Second, Seraphina continued, Draven keeps his full authority. No votes, no inquiries, no challenges to his rule. That's not... Third, she talked over Maddox. You investigate the real threat. The hunters. The traitors. The people actually trying to destroy this empire. She paused. Or do you not care about that? We care, another council member said. But then prove it. She looked around the room. Stop playing politics and do your jobs. Find the conspiracy. Protect your people. And let us do what we were meant to do. And what's that? Maddox asked. Survive. Together. The word echoed through the throne room. Draven moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and dangerous. My guardian has spoken, he said quietly. Those are her terms. Accept them, or I'll disband this council right now and rule by decree. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The staring contest lasted 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. Finally, Maddox looked away. Fine, he bit out. The ceremony, the full bond. But it happens tonight. No more delays. Agreed, Draven said. Then this session is closed. Maddox stood, his face tight with rage. But know this, my lord. If this bond fails, if she betrays you, if any of this goes wrong, the blood will be on your hands. There's already blood on my hands, Draven said. I'm a king. It's part of the job. Then he turned and walked out, and Seraphina followed, feeling every eye in the room boring into her back. They didn't speak until they were alone in a corridor far from the throne room. Then Draven spun on her. What the hell was that? That was me saving your throne. By agreeing to complete a bond you're not ready for? Are you ready? She shot back. Because last I checked, we don't have a choice. The magic is going to complete with or without our permission. At least this way, we control when and how. He stared at her, jaw tight. You shouldn't have done that. Why? Because you wanted to be the hero? She stepped closer. Newsflash, Draven. You don't get to protect me from everything. Sometimes I have to protect you. I don't need... Yes, you do. Cut him off. You need someone who isn't afraid of you. Someone who will call you on your shit. Someone who will stand beside you when everyone else is trying to tear you down. Her voice softened. That's what the bond is for. That's what guardians do. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're going to be trouble, he said finally. Probably. I'm going to regret this, definitely. His smile was small but genuine. Fine. We do this tonight. The old way. Full ceremony. What does that involve? He hesitated. It's, complicated. There are rituals, oaths, blood, and at the end, what? We merge. Completely. Mind, body, soul, no walls, no secrets. Everything I am becomes part of you, and everything you are becomes part of me. Her mouth went dry. Forever? Forever. The weight of it settled over her like a shroud. What if we hate each other after? She asked quietly. Then we hate each other forever. His eyes met hers. But at least we'll be alive. Is that enough? It has to be. The moon sanctum lay deep beneath the palace, carved from rock so old it predated the empire itself. Seraphina descended stairs that spiraled down into darkness, Celeste guiding her by torchlight. They'd left Draven above to prepare his part of the ceremony. "How do you feel?" Celeste asked. "Terrified." Seraphina's voice echoed off stone walls. "Excited, confused, like I'm about to jump off a cliff and I don't know if I can fly." "That's accurate." Celeste's smile was sad. "The bond ceremony is the most intimate thing two people can experience. More than marriage, more than any human connection." She paused. "You'll know everything about him. His fears, his failures, his darkest thoughts. And he'll know yours. That's horrifying." "It's necessary. A guardian and an alpha have to be perfectly in sync. One soul, one purpose." Her voice dropped. "My grandmother used to say that's why the bonds were so rare. Most people aren't strong enough to let someone see them completely. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you." Celeste stopped at a massive door carved with wolves and moons. "Behind this is the sanctum. Once you enter, the magic will take over. You won't be able to leave until the bond is complete, or you're both dead." "Wonderful." Seraphina. Celeste turned to face her. "My brother is a hard man, a violent man. He's done terrible things to keep this empire alive, but underneath all that, what? He's lonely." Celeste's eyes were bright. "He's been alone at the top for so long, carrying everything, trusting no one." She touched Seraphina's arm. "You're about to become the only person in the world who truly knows him. Don't waste that." Before Seraphina could respond, Celeste pushed open the door. The sanctum took her breath away. Circular. Massive. The walls carved with intricate patterns that seemed to move in the torchlight. At the center stood a raised platform surrounded by symbols that glowed faintly silver. And standing on that platform, bare-chested and covered in ritual markings, was Draven. He looked up as she entered, and even from across the room she felt the pull. Celeste left without another word, the door closing with a boom that echoed forever. They were alone. Seraphina walked slowly toward the platform, her heart hammering. Draven's chest was covered in black ink, ancient symbols painted by someone who knew the old ways. His eyes tracked her every movement. "Ready?" he asked. "No." She climbed the steps to stand across from him. "But let's do it anyway." His smile was brief. "That's the spirit." He held out his hand, and she took it. The moment their skin touched, the symbols on the floor blazed to life. Magic surged through the room like a tidal wave. Seraphina gasped as it crashed over her, filling her lungs, her veins, her soul. Draven's grip tightened, anchoring her. "Don't fight it," he said. "Let it take you. Easy for you to say." "I know, trust me anyway." The magic pulled them closer until they were standing chest to chest, breathing in sync. The symbols on Draven's skin began to glow, matching the ones on the floor. "Now we speak the oaths," he said. "Repeat after me. I bind my soul to yours." "I bind my soul to yours," she echoed. "My strength is your strength. My strength is your strength. My life is your life." The words caught in her throat. "My life is your life. Until death, we are one. Until death, we are one." The magic exploded. Seraphina screamed as it tore through her, ripping away every wall she'd ever built. She felt Draven's memories flooding in, his childhood, his father's death. The first time he killed, the weight of the crown, the loneliness that carved him hollow. And he felt hers, her grandmother's murder, the fear of her own power, the isolation, the desperate need to belong somewhere. They fell to their knees together, hands locked, foreheads pressed together. The bond pulled tighter, tighter, until there was no space left between their souls. And in that moment, everything changed. Seraphina felt his strength pouring into her, felt his predator instincts, felt the beast that lived beneath his skin. And Draven felt her magic, ancient, pure, powerful enough to rival his own. They were becoming one, not male and female, not human and wolf, just power recognizing power, soul recognizing soul. The final barrier shattered. They collapsed on the platform, tangled together, breathing hard. The magic settled like a blanket. The glowing symbols faded. And when Seraphina opened her eyes, she saw through two sets of vision, her own and his. She felt his heartbeat as if it were her own, felt his thoughts brushing against hers. Draven, she thought. Here, he answered without speaking. They stayed like that, learning the shape of their new reality. One soul stretched between two bodies. One consciousness split but unified. Finally, Draven spoke aloud. How do you feel? Like I just died and came back as something else. She looked at him. You? The same. He sat up slowly, pulling her with him. Can you feel it? Everything? Yes. The word encompassed more than she could express. His strength hummed beneath her skin. His senses sharpened her own. She could smell things she'd never noticed. Hear conversations happening floors above them. Feel the pulse of the Empire through his connection to the land. It's overwhelming, she admitted. It gets easier. His hand cupped her face. You did well. We did well. His smile was small but genuine. Yes, we did. They sat there in the sanctum, learning to exist as one, while above them the Empire held its breath, waiting to see what kind of monster they'd just created. Because that's what they were now. Not human, not wolf, not guardian. Something new, something ancient, something that hadn't walked the world in 300 years. And in the shadows of the palace, the traitors realized their window of opportunity was closing fast. If they were going to strike, it had to be now, before the bond solidified completely, before the new Guardian Queen learned to wield her full power, before the Alpha King became truly unstoppable. The pieces were already in motion, the weapons already distributed, the final assault already planned. They just had to wait for the perfect moment. And as Draven and Seraphina emerged from the moon sanctum, hands linked, eyes glowing with shared power, that moment arrived. Because nothing attracts predators quite like fresh blood, and nothing inspires rebellion quite like impossible power in the hands of those who weren't supposed to have it. The real war was about to begin, and this time there would be no mercy. They emerged from the moon sanctum at dawn. The palace guards knelt as they passed, heads bowed, recognizing something fundamental had changed. Seraphina felt their fear like a living thing, felt their awe, felt the way every wolf instinct in the building recognized her now as something beyond human. Queen Guardian. The title whispered through the bond from Draven's thoughts. I'm not a queen, she sent back. You are now. His hand tightened on hers, whether you wanted it or not. They walked through corridors that felt different, sharper, more alive. Seraphina could hear conversations happening 3 floors up, could smell the fear sweat on servants they passed, could feel the pulse of magic running through the ancient stones like blood through veins. Everything was too much and not enough all at once. Draven's memories sat in her mind like furniture in a room she'd just moved into. She knew things she shouldn't. The names of traitors he suspected but couldn't prove. The weight of every decision that had cost lives. The way his father's death replayed in his dreams every night. And he knew her, knew the way she'd watched her grandmother die, knew the loneliness that had carved her hollow, knew the fear she'd carried her entire life, that the magic would consume her the way the villagers said it would. No walls left, no secrets, just brutal honesty stretched between 2 souls. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like finally being understood. They reached his chambers, and he pulled her inside, closing the door behind them. The moment they were alone, his shoulders sagged slightly. How long do we have? She asked. Before what? Before they come for us. His smile was bitter. They're already coming. They just don't know we can feel them. He was right. Through the bond, Seraphina felt the undercurrents of the palace, whispered conversations, secret meetings, the slow gathering of forces that meant violence was coming. Who? She asked. I don't know yet. His jaw tightened. But I will. A knock at the door interrupted them. Celeste entered, Lucian padding at her heels in wolf form. The cub's tail wagged when he saw them, but Celeste's expression was grim. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Just one? Draven asked dryly. The southern border. 3 villages burned last night. Hunters. They're moving north in force. She paused. And there's something else. What? Lord Maddox is calling for another council session. Emergency. He says there's been a development that requires immediate action. Of course he is. Draven's eyes narrowed. When? 1 hour. Seraphina felt his fury through the bond, felt him calculating whether to refuse or attend, weighing the political cost against the trap he knew was coming. "We go," she said aloud. They both looked at her. "It's a trap," Draven said. "Probably. But if we hide, we look weak. If we refuse, they claim we're defying the council." She met his eyes. "We face it head on." Through the bond, she felt his reluctant agreement. Felt something else, too. Pride. "Fine," he said. "But you stay behind me." "Absolutely not." "Seraphina, we're bonded now. That means equals." She stepped closer. "You don't get to protect me from everything anymore. We face threats together, or not at all." His expression shifted, softened, then hardened again into something else. "You're going to get us both killed," he said quietly. "Maybe. But at least we'll die standing. God's help me, I think I'm starting to like you." The words hung between them, more intimate than they should have been. Celeste cleared her throat. "I'll leave you to prepare. But Draven," she hesitated. "Be careful. Maddox has been too quiet since the ceremony. That man doesn't accept defeat. He never planned to." After she left, Draven and Seraphina dressed in silence. Combat gear disguised as formal clothes, weapons hidden where they could be reached quickly. The routine of people preparing for war. When they were ready, Draven turned to her. "Whatever happens in there," he said, "don't let them separate us. The bond is still new, still settling. If they manage to get between us physically, they might find a way to disrupt it magically." "Can they do that?" "I don't know, but I'm not willing to find out." They walked to the council chamber together, and with every step, Seraphina felt the weight of eyes tracking them. Servants who stopped working to watch. Guards who touched their weapons nervously. Nobles who whispered behind hands. The bonded pair. The new power. The thing that shouldn't exist. The council chamber doors stood open. Inside, every seat was filled. More nobles than last time. Ministers. Military commanders. Even merchants and guildmasters who normally had no place in royal politics. This wasn't a council session. This was an audience, a trial. Draven's hand found hers, squeezing once before they entered. The room fell silent as they walked to the center. Lord Maddox sat in his usual place, but his expression was different, calmer, almost pleased, like a hunter who'd finally cornered his prey. "My lord," he said with false courtesy. "My lady, thank you for joining us." "You summoned us," Draven said flatly. "Here we are. What's so urgent it couldn't wait? We've received reports from the southern border. 3 villages destroyed, over 200 dead. The hunters are no longer operating in small groups. This is an army, I'm aware." "Are you?" "Because from where we sit, it appears you've been distracted." Maddox gestured vaguely. "The ceremony, the bonding. While you were busy with personal matters, our people were being slaughtered." "Careful," Draven said softly. "No, I don't think so." Maddox stood. "I think careful is what got us into this mess. Careful is what allowed hunters to organize under our noses. Careful is what let them build an army while we pretended everything was fine." "What's your point?" "My point is that maybe it's time for a different approach. Maybe we need a leader who puts the Empire before their own desires. You're treading on dangerous ground." "Am I?" Maddox smiled. "Because I'm not the only one who thinks this. In fact, I'd say most of us agree." He gestured to the assembled nobles. One by one, they stood. 1 dozen, 2 dozen. More than half the room. Seraphina's blood ran cold. This wasn't a council session. This was a coup. Through the bond, she felt Draven's realization hitting at the same moment, felt his shock, his rage, and underneath it all, the bitter taste of betrayal. "Lord Maddox," Celeste's voice cut through the tension. She'd entered from a side door, Lucian at her heels. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that we suspend the Alpha King's authority. Temporarily. Until this crisis is resolved, and we can be certain his judgment isn't compromised." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that he completed a soul bond with a woman he'd known for 3 days. On the grounds that he's prioritized her safety over the Empire's. On the grounds that while he was underground performing ancient rituals, our people burned." The accusations landed like blows. Draven's control was absolute, but Seraphina felt the fury underneath, felt him wanting to shift, to tear, to remind them all what happened to wolves who challenged the Alpha. But he stayed human. Stayed still, because violence now would only prove their point. You planned this, Draven said quietly. The attacks, the timing, all of it. Maddox's smile confirmed it. We simply encouraged events to align. The hunters were already moving. We just made sure they moved when it would be most effective. You sacrificed our own people. I sacrificed pawns to remove a compromised king. There's a difference. The casual cruelty of it made Seraphina's stomach turn. These were the people Draven had ruled, protected, and they'd orchestrated mass murder just to undermine him. You won't get away with this, Celeste said. We already have. Maddox looked at the assembled nobles, all those in favor of suspending the Alpha King's authority until the crisis passes and the bond can be properly evaluated. Raise your hand. Hands went up. Too many hands. Seraphina counted quickly. More than 3/4 of the room. More than enough for a legal suspension under ancient law. Draven's hand tightened on hers until she felt bones grinding. Don't, she sent through the bond. Don't give them an excuse. They've already won, he sent back. The votes are counted. Then we change the game. She stepped forward before he could stop her. Lord Maddox, she said clearly, you claim Draven's judgment is compromised, that the bond makes him weak, unfit to rule. That's correct. Then test it. Silence fell. What? Maddox's eyes narrowed. Test the bond. Test me. Prove that we're compromised. She looked around the room. Because if you can't, then this isn't about protecting the Empire. It's about a power grab dressed up as concern. How do you propose we test it? Combat. Single combat. She felt Draven's shock through the bond, but pressed forward. You choose a champion. If they can beat me, you win. Draven steps down. But if I win, this coup ends. Now. Forever. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Arguments. Protests. Maddox raised a hand, silencing them. You understand what you're proposing? He asked. Champions in these trials fight to the death. I understand. You've had the bond for less than a day. You don't know how to use it. Any trained warrior would cut you down in seconds. Maybe. Her smile was sharp. Or maybe you're wrong about what the bond does. Seraphina, Draven's voice was low and dangerous. What are you doing? Saving your throne, she sent back. Trust me. I don't... Trust me. She felt his internal war, his desire to stop her, his knowledge that she was right. If they fought this politically, they'd already lost. But combat was different. Combat was simple. Win or die. He looked at Maddox. You accept her terms? The old lord studied Seraphina for a long moment, calculating, weighing odds. I accept, he said finally. My champion against the Guardian. To the death. When? Now, Seraphina said. Now? Maddox laughed. You don't even know who you're fighting. Doesn't matter. Oh, I think it will. He gestured to the side door. It opened, and the person who walked through made Seraphina's heart stop. Celeste. Draven's sister entered the arena space in the center of the chamber, already shifting. Her bones cracked and reformed, fur rippled across her skin. Within seconds, she stood as a massive wolf, easily twice the size of a natural animal. Her eyes glowed gold, and they were fixed on Seraphina with pure predator focus. No, Draven breathed. I'm sorry, brother, Celeste's voice echoed in their minds through pack bonds. But they have Lucienne. They have my son. If I don't do this, they'll kill him. The truth hit like a sledgehammer. Where is he? Draven demanded. Safe, Maddox said. For now, as long as your sister cooperates. If she doesn't, he shrugged. Well, accidents happen, even to young princes. You bastard. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Maddox looked at Seraphina. So, Guardian, still want to fight? Or would you prefer to concede and save everyone the trouble? Seraphina looked at Celeste, at the wolf who'd shown her kindness, who'd guided her through the palace, who was trapped between her son's life and her brother's throne. Through the bond, she felt Draven's anguish, felt him tearing apart inside, choosing between his sister and his mate, between family and power. There was no good answer, so Seraphina made the choice for him. I fight, she said. Maddox smiled. Excellent. The nobles cleared back, forming a circle around the combat space. Guards moved to the edges, weapons ready in case anyone tried to interfere. Draven grabbed her arm, pulling her close. You can't, he said desperately. She's trained, experienced. She'll kill you, maybe. There's no maybe about it. He turned to Maddox. Change the terms. Me, instead. I'll fight her. No, Maddox said. The Guardian challenged. The Guardian fights. Those are the rules. Fuck the rules. Language, my lord. Maddox's smile was poison. Now step back, unless you want to forfeit. Draven looked like he wanted to murder everyone in the room. Seraphina touched his face, forcing him to look at her. I know what I'm doing, she sent through the bond. You're going to die. We're all going to die eventually. She tried to smile. At least this way, it means something. I can't lose you. The raw honesty in his voice nearly broke her. We just found each other. Then don't lose. Help me. How? The bond. Show me how to fight like you. Understanding flashed in his eyes, followed immediately by horror. That will hurt, he said, forcing combat instincts through a new bond. It might tear your mind apart. Better than definitely dying. Seraphina, please. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they burned gold. Fine, he said, but you stay in my head the whole time. If it starts to fracture you, I'm pulling us both out. Understand? Understood. He kissed her then. Hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Then he stepped back. Seraphina turned to face Celeste. The wolf watched her with sad eyes. I'm sorry, her voice whispered through pack bonds. I don't want this. I know. Seraphina's hands clenched into fists. But your son is more important than me. I understand. Thank you. Come at me with everything. If you hold back, they'll know. Celeste's ears flattened. I will. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Maddox raised his hand. Begin. Celeste lunged. Seraphina barely had time to move before 200 pounds of wolf muscle hit her like a freight train. They went down hard, rolling across stone. Claws tore through her shirt, drawing blood. Now, Draven's voice roared through the bond. He flooded her mind with instinct. Wolf instinct. Predator knowledge bred over thousands of years. How to read movement. How to anticipate attacks. How to turn defense into offense. The information hit Seraphina like a tsunami. Her mind screamed. Human brains weren't meant to process this way. Weren't meant to think like predators. But the bond held, stretched, adapted, and suddenly she saw the world differently. Celeste's next attack came in slow motion. Seraphina saw the weight shift, saw the muscle tension, saw the exact trajectory of teeth aimed at her throat. She twisted, letting the momentum carry her, brought her knee up into Celeste's ribs, felt something crack. The wolf yelped, rolling away. They circled each other. Blood dripped from Seraphina's torn shoulder. Blood leaked from Celeste's mouth. More, Seraphina demanded through the bond. Give me more. This will hurt, Draven warned. I don't care. He opened the floodgates. Power poured into her. Not just instinct now, but strength. The kind that came from Alpha bloodline mixed with Guardian magic. Her muscles burned as they reinforced. Her bones ached as they hardened. She was changing, not shifting, but becoming something between human and wolf. Something the bond made possible. Celeste attacked again, faster this time. Seraphina met her head on. They collided with enough force to crack the stone floor, claws against magic-reinforced skin, teeth against power that crackled green and violent. The watching nobles gasped. Seraphina drove Celeste back, step by step. Her hands glowed with guardian magic channeled through alpha instinct. She caught the wolf by the throat, squeezing. Celeste's eyes went wide. I'm sorry, Seraphina sent through pack bonds. Then she threw the wolf across the chamber. Celeste hit the wall with a sickening crunch. Slid down. Didn't get up. Silence. Seraphina stood in the center of the combat space, breathing hard, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. Her hands still glowed. Her eyes burned the same gold as Draven's. Is she alive? Maddox demanded. Seraphina listened. Heard the faint heartbeat. Yes. Then the fight isn't over. She's done. Seraphina looked at him. She fought. She lost. Honorably. Where's Lucienne? Maddox's expression was unreadable. Bring the cub. Guards entered carrying a small wolf that whimpered and struggled. Lucienne, alive. Terrified but unharmed. They set him down and he immediately ran to his unconscious mother, pressing against her side. Satisfied? Maddox asked. No. Seraphina walked toward him, and the nobles between them scrambled out of the way. But I'm done playing games. She stopped directly in front of Maddox's seat, close enough to reach out and touch him, close enough that he had to look up to meet her eyes. You used a child as leverage. You orchestrated mass murder. You betrayed your king. Her voice was quiet, deadly. And you thought you'd win because I was just a human who got lucky. The old lord's face had gone pale. The Guardian trial was your idea. It was. And you accepted because you thought Celeste would tear me apart. She let the magic crackle around her fingers. You were wrong. Seraphina, Draven's voice came from behind her. Careful. She ignored him. Here's what's going to happen, she told Maddox. You're going to tell us everything. Who else is involved? How deep the conspiracy goes? Where the hunters are getting their weapons? All of it. And if I refuse, then I'll rip it from your mind. She leaned closer. The bond gives me access to Draven's memories, his knowledge, his power. And one of the things Alpha Kings can do is dominate weaker wolves, break their mental shields, take what they want. It was a bluff. She didn't know if she could actually do it, but Maddox didn't know that. His hand trembled slightly. You wouldn't dare. I just fought your champion to save a throne I didn't even want. Her smile was sharp. What do you think I won't dare? The standoff stretched. Then Maddox's shoulders sagged. Fine, he said bitterly. I'll talk. Good choice. But don't think this is over. His eyes burned with hate. There are more of us, in places you haven't looked, and we will bring this empire down. Maybe, Seraphina straightened, but not today. She turned to address the entire chamber. Anyone else want to challenge the Alpha King's authority? She asked. Because I'm still standing, still ready. No one moved. No one spoke. The message was clear. The Guardian wasn't weak, wasn't helpless, wasn't the liability they'd assumed. She was dangerous. Draven moved to her side, his presence solid and threatening. This session is over, he said quietly. Guards, take Lord Maddox to the holding cells. I'll question him personally. He looked at the other nobles who'd raised their hands earlier. The rest of you are confined to your quarters until we determine your level of involvement. Anyone who tries to leave the palace will be considered an enemy combatant. My lord, one of them protested. We were coerced. Save it. His voice could have cut glass. I'll hear your excuses during interrogation. Until then, shut up and be grateful you're still breathing. He grabbed Seraphina's hand, pulling her toward the door. They walked in silence until they were alone in a side corridor. Then his control shattered. He spun her against the wall, his hands framing her face, his body pressed against hers. Don't ever do that again, he said roughly. I saved your throne. You almost died. But I didn't. You could have. His forehead pressed against hers. God, Seraphina, when she hit you that first time, when I felt your pain through the bond, I nearly killed everyone in that room. But you didn't. Only because you asked me to trust you. His hands were shaking. Do you have any idea what it cost me to stand there and watch? She did. Through the bond, she felt the echo of it, the agony of watching someone you're tied to fight for their life, the helplessness, the rage. I'm sorry, she said softly. Don't apologize. Just... His voice cracked. Don't leave me. Not now. Not when I finally found you. I'm not going anywhere. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her then, desperate, claiming, pouring everything he felt through the bond until she was drowning in it. Fear, relief, possession, need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were still gold. We need to move fast, he said. Maddox won't be the only traitor. There will be more, deeper. And now that they know we're onto them, they'll accelerate whatever they have planned. What do? We find them before they find us. He pulled back, already shifting into king mode. I'll interrogate Maddox. You check on Celeste. Make sure she's actually healing and not faking to get close to Lucian again. You think she'd... I don't know what to think anymore. His expression was bleak. I trusted her. She's my sister, and she still would have killed you if she could have. She was protecting her son. I know. That doesn't make it hurt less. Seraphina touched his face. We'll figure this out, together. Together, he agreed. They split up, Draven heading toward the cells and Seraphina toward the medical wing. The palace felt different now. Hostile. Like the walls themselves were watching, waiting. She found Celeste in a private room, bones already healed, wrapped in bandages more for appearance than necessity. Lucienne lay curled against her side, both of them sleeping. The scene should have been peaceful. It felt like a lie. Seraphina stood in the doorway, watching them, wondering how deep the betrayal went, wondering who else was playing roles while plotting murder. A hand touched her shoulder. She spun, magic flaring. Mira jumped back, hands up. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Seraphina forced herself to breathe. Calm down. What are you doing here? The girl glanced nervously at Celeste. I wanted to check on Lady Celeste, and she hesitated. And I wanted to warn you. About what? The servants have been talking. There's going to be another attack. Tonight, when the guard changes. She lowered her voice to barely a whisper. They're saying it's the big one. The one that ends everything. Who's saying this? Mira's eyes filled with tears. Everyone. All of us. We've known for weeks something was coming. She swallowed. We were too afraid to say anything. And you're telling me now because you fought for us? The girl's voice shook. When you challenged Lord Maddox, when you said we deserved better, you meant it. I could see it. So, she straightened. I'm choosing to trust you. Seraphina's mind raced. If there was another attack planned, if it was tonight, they had hours at most to prepare. Where? She demanded. Where will they strike? I don't know, but Mira bit her lip. I heard them mention the throne room during the evening assembly. The evening assembly, when every noble, minister, and military commander would be gathered in one place, including Draven. It wasn't an attack, it was an execution. Seraphina's blood turned to ice. Get out of the palace, she told Mira. Now, take anyone you care about and run. What about you? I'm ending this. She ran, through corridors, downstairs, toward the cells where Draven was interrogating Maddox. But she never made it. The explosion ripped through the western wing with enough force to shake the entire palace. Seraphina was thrown off her feet, hitting the wall hard enough to see stars. Dust and smoke filled the air. Screams echoed. She struggled up, coughing. Draven, she called through the bond. Draven, here, his response came. Weak, pained. The cells, they collapsed. I'm trapped. Terror shot through her. Hold on, I'm coming. She ran toward the prison level, but guards were already streaming up, fleeing the destruction. It's not safe, one of them shouted. The whole structure is collapsing. She shoved past them. The stairs were half destroyed. She climbed through rubble, cutting her hands on sharp stone. The air grew thicker with dust, harder to breathe. Draven, she sent. Keep talking to me. Let me track you. East cell block. His mental voice was strained. Ceiling came down. Maddox is dead. Crushed. Can you move? Legs are pinned. And there's something else. Silver shrapnel. In my chest. Poisoned. The words hit like bullets. I'm coming. Just hold on. Seraphina, if the poison spreads... It won't. I won't let it. She reached the cell block, or what was left of it. The entire ceiling had caved in, turning the corridor into a tomb of broken stone and twisted metal. Where are you? She called aloud. Here. His voice came from somewhere in the rubble, weak, barely audible. She started digging, lifting stones that should have been too heavy, fueled by bond and magic and desperation. It took forever. It took seconds. Finally, she uncovered him. He lay half buried, blood soaking through his shirt. His face was pale, too pale. And when she touched him, his skin was cold. The silver was killing him. No, she breathed. Stay with me. His eyes opened, gold fading to amber, tired. They planned this, he said. Knew I'd come here. Knew exactly where to plant the explosives. We'll make them pay. She pressed her hands to his chest, calling the healing magic. But nothing happened. The silver blocked it. You need to pull the shrapnel out first. Can't reach it. His smile was bitter. Funny. Survived 1,000 battles, killed by a trap. You're not dying. She grabbed the edge of metal protruding from his chest. This is going to hurt. Already does. She pulled. He screamed. The shrapnel came free in a spray of black blood. She threw it aside and pressed her glowing hands to the wound. The magic fought the poison, burned through it, slowly, too slowly. Draven's breathing was shallow, his heartbeat irregular through the bond. You have to go, he said. The assembly, it's a trap. They'll kill everyone. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are. His hand found hers. You're the guardian. You protect the Empire. Even if it means... He stopped. Don't say it. Someone has to. His eyes met hers. If I die, the bond will try to take you too. But you have to fight it, have to survive. For them. There is no them without you. There has to be. His voice was fading. Promise me. Promise you'll let me go if it comes to that. The words caught in her throat, because she knew he was right. Knew the bond would try to drag her into death with him. Knew surviving would mean tearing herself apart, becoming half of something that used to be whole. And she knew she'd do it anyway. For the Empire. For the people who couldn't protect themselves. For the memory of a king who'd given everything. I promise, she lied. He smiled. Knew it. Liar. Then his eyes closed, and through the bond she felt him slipping away. No. The word tore from Seraphina's throat as she felt Draven's life force dimming through the bond. The connection between them flickered like a candle in a storm, threatening to extinguish completely. Her hands burned brighter, green light so intense it hurt to look at. She poured everything into him, every scrap of magic, every ounce of will. The healing power crashed against the silver poison like waves against a cliff, wearing it down molecule by molecule. Come back, she demanded. You don't get to leave me. Not now. Not after everything. His heartbeat stuttered. Stopped. The bond screamed. Seraphina felt herself being pulled toward the void, felt the ancient magic trying to drag her into death with him because that's what happened when one half of a bonded pair died. They fell together. Always. But she'd learned something in the past days. Something the old texts never mentioned because no one had lived to write it down. The bond wasn't just a connection. It was a conduit. And conduits worked both ways. If she could pull his memories into her mind, she could push her life force into his body. So she did. The pain was indescribable, like having her soul torn in half and shoved through a needle's eye. She felt herself fragmenting, pieces of her consciousness bleeding into him while he bled back into her. But his heart started beating again, weak, irregular, but beating. The silver poison retreated, burned away by magic that refused to accept defeat. The wound in his chest began to close, flesh knitting together with agonizing slowness. Seraphina's vision grayed. Her hands shook. She was giving too much, burning through her own life to fuel his. She didn't care. Draven's eyes opened, gold, clear, furious. Stop, he rasped. You're killing yourself. Then we die together. Seraphina, shut up and let me work. She pushed harder and the final traces of poison dissolved. His wounds sealed completely. Color returned to his face, and she collapsed. Draven caught her before she hit the rubble, pulling her against his chest. His hands framed her face, searching. Breathe, he commanded. Come on. Breathe. She gasped, dragging air into lungs that felt like they'd been scorched from the inside. Everything hurt. Her bones, her blood, her soul. But she was alive. They both were. You stupid, reckless, magnificent woman, Draven said roughly. Do you have any idea what you just did? Saved your life. You gave me half your soul. His voice cracked. That's not healing. That's sacrifice. So now if either of us dies, the other one doesn't just feel it. We literally can't survive it. The bond was already strong. Now it's absolute. His forehead pressed against hers. We're completely bound. No going back, ever. Good. Good? He pulled back to look at her. Seraphina, you just tied yourself to me in the most permanent way possible. If I die in battle, you die. If you get assassinated, I die. We're not just connected anymore. We're the same life split between two bodies. I know. She touched his face. And I'd do it again. Something shifted in his expression, something raw and vulnerable that made her chest ache. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. Probably not. She tried to smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. He kissed her then, desperate, claiming, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact, fear, gratitude, something that felt dangerously close to love but neither of them had the words for yet. When they broke apart, his eyes had gone cold, calculating. The throne room, he said. The assembly. How long? She checked the angle of light filtering through the rubble. Maybe an hour, less. Then we move. Now. He stood, pulling her up with him. Can you fight? Can you? I just got a transfusion of guardian magic directly into my bloodstream. His smile was sharp. I could fight an army. You might have to. They climbed out of the collapsed cells, Draven moving with renewed strength that shouldn't have been possible. The bond hummed between them, stronger than before, feeding them each other's power in ways that defied explanation. Guards met them in the upper corridor, weapons drawn. My lord, the captain said, the western wing is completely destroyed. We've lost contact with 3 guard posts, and there are reports of armed men moving through the lower levels. How many? At least 50. Maybe more. They're wearing palace uniforms, but no one recognizes them. Infiltrators. Draven's jaw tightened. How long have they been here? Unknown, my lord. Seraphina felt the pieces clicking into place. The conspiracy ran deeper than Maddox, deeper than a handful of nobles. This was coordinated, planned over months, maybe years. They've been replacing your people, she said. Slowly, one at a time. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. Draven's eyes blazed. Where's Celeste? Medical wing, with loose Unseen. Get her. Get my nephew. Get them to the inner sanctum. He looked at the captain. I want every loyal guard we have at that throne room. If anyone we don't recognize tries to enter, kill them. My lord, the captain hesitated. The nobles are already gathering. If we start killing people without proof, then they'll complain from their graves. His voice was steel. I'm done playing by rules written to make us weak. Starting now, we do what's necessary, not what's proper. The captain swallowed hard. Yes, my lord. They split up, Draven heading toward the throne room while Seraphina ran for the medical wing. The palace was chaos. Servants fleeing, guards shouting contradictory orders, smoke still rising from the destroyed western wing, and underneath it all, the sense of something massive about to break. She reached the medical wing to find the door hanging open. Inside, the room was empty. Celeste and Lucien were gone. Blood smeared the floor. No. Seraphina followed the trail, heart pounding. It led down a side corridor. Through a door she'd never noticed. Into passages that weren't on any map she'd seen. Secret ways. Old routes. The kind of paths people used when they didn't want to be found. She ran faster, the bond stretching as distance grew between her and Draven. She felt his awareness at the edge of her mind, felt him arriving at the throne room, felt his shock as he surveyed the assembly. Too many, he sent. There are too many I don't recognize. Where's Celeste? She sent back. No answer. Which meant he didn't know either. The trail led down, deep beneath the palace into tunnels carved from living rock. Ancient, predating the current structure by centuries, and at the end of the tunnel she found them. Celeste knelt in the center of a circular chamber, Lucien clutched to her chest. Around them stood a dozen armed men, all wearing palace uniforms, all pointing crossbows loaded with silver bolts. And standing in front of them, smiling, was someone Seraphina recognized. Minister Thorn, one of Draven's oldest advisors, a man who'd served 3 Alpha Kings, a man everyone trusted. Let them go, Seraphina said. Thorn's smile widened. I was hoping you'd come. Makes this so much easier. Makes what easier? Leverage. He gestured to Celeste and Lucien. You're the bonded mate, which means you'll do anything to protect the Alpha King, but the Alpha King will do anything to protect his family. He spread his hands. Classic standoff. Except I hold all the pieces. You're the one behind this. All of it. Guilty. He didn't sound remotely sorry. Did you really think it was just Maddox? That old fool was a puppet. Useful, expendable, but not the architect. Why? Why betray the king I've served for 15 years? His expression hardened. Because he's weak. Because he cares more about honor than survival. Because he refused to do what was necessary when the hunters first started organizing. He paused. I tried to guide him, tried to show him the path, but he wouldn't listen. So I found people who would. The hunters. Partners. They want the wolves dead. I want the empire restructured. We both get what we want once Draven falls. You'll never pull this off. We already have. Thorn checked a timepiece. In approximately 10 minutes, the throne room will be filled with nobles and ministers. Half of them are mine. The other half will be surrounded by my people. When Draven arrives, they'll kill him. Publicly. Brutally. And his loyal followers will have no choice but to surrender or die. He doesn't know, Seraphina realized. Doesn't know Draven's already there. She reached through the bond. The throne room. It's a trap. Get out. Can't, Draven sent back. There are hostages, families, children. If I leave, they'll start executing them. Then we have a problem. Because she was here, in a tunnel beneath the palace, facing a dozen crossbows. And he was there, surrounded by enemies wearing friendly faces, separated by stone and distance. Exactly what Thorn had planned. I'm going to offer you a choice, Thorn said. Come quietly. Let us use you to break Draven. Make him surrender. Do that, and I'll let Celeste and the cub live. And if I refuse, then I kill them now. He raised his hand. The decision is yours. Seraphina looked at Celeste, the woman who'd tried to kill her days ago, the woman who'd been protecting her son the only way she knew how, the woman who was terrified and desperate and trapped. Their eyes met. I'm sorry, Celeste whispered. Don't be. Seraphina's hands began to glow. Last chance, Thorn warned. I'm done with chances. She moved. Not toward Thorn. Toward Celeste. The crossbows fired as one, silver bolts screaming through the air. Seraphina threw up a shield of green light, deflecting them. They clattered harmlessly against stone. She grabbed Celeste and Lucien, pulling them behind her. Kill her, Thorn shouted. The guards drew swords and rushed forward. Seraphina met them with magic that had been building since she entered the tunnel. Vines erupted from cracks in the stone, wrapping around legs and arms. Light exploded in bursts that sent men flying backward. But there were too many, and she was already exhausted from healing Draven. A blade got through her defenses, slashing across her ribs. Another caught her shoulder. She stumbled, vision blurring. Through the bond, she felt Draven's panic. What's happening? Where are you? Underground. East side. The old tunnels. Hold on. I'm coming. No. You have hostages. I can handle this. It was a lie. She couldn't handle this. She was outnumbered and outmatched and running on fumes. But she'd be damned if she let him sacrifice innocent people to save her. She called the magic again, ignoring the way her bones screamed in protest. The vines grew thicker, more aggressive. They wrapped around the guards, squeezing until bones cracked. Thorn watched from a safe distance, expression calculating. Impressive, he said, but ultimately pointless. He raised his hand again, and this time something else entered the tunnel. A wraith, bigger than the one they'd fought before. Older, more powerful. Its shadow filled the circular chamber, drinking the light. Where the hell did you get that? Seraphina breathed. We have allies in dark places, Thorn said. Now, let's discuss terms again. This time without the theatrics. The wraith glided forward, and Seraphina felt her magic recoiling from it, felt the wrongness of its existence, felt death radiating from it like heat from a furnace. She pushed Celeste and Lucien behind her. Run! We can't leave you, Celeste said. You have to. Get to the sanctum. Tell Draven where I am. She looked back and her smile was bitter. Go. Celeste hesitated one more second. Then she shifted, grabbed Lucien by the scruff, and bolted down a side tunnel. The wraith screamed, starting to follow. Seraphina hit it with everything she had left. Green light blazed through the chamber, brighter than the sun. The wraith shrieked, turning toward her. She felt it reaching for her soul, trying to pull it free, but she'd already given half her soul to Draven. The wraith's grip found nothing to latch onto. Confusion rippled through the creature. That's right, she said through gritted teeth. I'm already dead, just too stubborn to lie down. She attacked. Not with a magic this time. With raw power channeled through the bond. Draven's strength, his ferocity, his absolute refusal to quit. She hit the wraith like a hammer, again and again, each strike burning through shadow. The creature fought back, landing blows that should have killed her. But the bond held, kept her standing, kept her fighting. Above her, in the throne room, she felt Draven engaging his own battle. Felt him shifting. Felt him tearing through enemies with savage efficiency. They were fighting separate wars in separate places. But through the bond, they were together, feeding each other's strength, covering each other's weaknesses. One soul in two bodies fighting the same enemy. Thorn's voice cut through the chaos. Enough! Seraphina looked up, panting, to find him holding a device she didn't recognize. Black metal. Arcane symbols. Pulsing with sick green light. Soul cage, he said. Ancient tech. Designed to trap bonded pairs. He smiled. One of you dies, you both die. That's the weakness of the bond. Always has been. He activated it. Pain exploded through Seraphina's chest, through the bond, through every nerve she had. She felt it happening. Felt the device trying to sever the connection between her and Draven. Felt their souls being ripped apart. Draven roared in the throne room, dropping to his knees. Stop, Seraphina gasped. Please, surrender, Thorn said. Both of you, or I complete the severance and you both die screaming. She felt Draven's response through the bond. Felt his rage, his refusal. Never. Then die, Thorn said. The device pulsed brighter. The bond stretched, thinned, started to tear. And in that moment, suspended between life and death, Seraphina understood something fundamental. The bond wasn't their weakness, it was their weapon. Because Thorn was right. They shared one life now, one consciousness, which meant they also shared one power source. And if she could push her life force into Draven to heal him, she could pull his strength into herself to survive this. She reached through the bond, not to take, to merge. Draven felt her intention and didn't hesitate. He opened himself completely, letting their powers combine in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Guardian magic and alpha strength crashed together like matter and antimatter. The explosion was catastrophic. Green and gold light erupted from Seraphina's body with enough force to shatter the soul cage, to vaporize the wraith, to send Thorn flying backward into the stone wall with a crack that meant bones breaking. The shockwave rolled through the tunnels, through the palace, through the entire mountain. In the throne room, Draven's enemies collapsed, overwhelmed by power they couldn't comprehend. Seraphina stood in the wreckage of the circular chamber, hands glowing with combined magic that crackled between her fingers. Not human, not wolf, something entirely new. The stories were wrong. The old bonds hadn't failed because they were weak. They'd failed because no one knew how to use them properly, didn't understand that true power came from merging completely instead of staying separate. But she understood now. They both did. Thorn struggled to his feet, blood running from his mouth. Impossible, he breathed. The texts were written by people who never completed a bond. She walked toward him. People who were too afraid to give themselves completely. We're not. His eyes widened. You're monsters. No. Her smile was sharp. We're what happens when you push the wrong people too far. She raised her hand. Wait, Thorn said desperately. Wait. I can tell you everything. Names, locations, the entire conspiracy. I already know. Through the bond, she had access to Draven's decades of investigation, knew every suspected traitor, every hidden alliance. She didn't need Thorn anymore, but Draven's voice echoed in her mind. Let him live. We need him to testify, need the nobles to see justice done properly. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to end him, to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. Please, Draven sent. Trust me on this. We can't rule through fear alone. We need law, order. Even now. The words cut through her rage. He was right. Killing Thorn in a tunnel wouldn't solve anything, wouldn't stop the conspiracy, wouldn't heal the Empire. But putting him on trial, making him confess publicly, showing everyone that even the most trusted advisor could fall, that would send a message. Fine, she sent back. But I reserve the right to kill him later if he tries anything. Fair enough. She grabbed Thorn by the collar, hauling him toward the tunnel exit. Guards, she called. I need guards. They came running, loyal men who'd stayed true. They took Thorn, binding him in silver chains that burned against his skin. The throne room, one of them said. My lord needs you. She ran, up through the tunnels, through corridors filled with the aftermath of battle. Bodies, blood, survivors huddled in corners. The throne room doors hung open. Inside was carnage. Draven stood in the center, shifted to his war form, surrounded by corpses. Blood painted the black stone floor. His eyes burned gold, tracking every shadow, ready for the next attack. But the fighting was over. The traitors were dead or captured. The hostages were being escorted out by loyal guards. Seraphina walked through the destruction toward him. Their eyes met across the room, and through the bond she felt everything he'd just survived. Felt his exhaustion, his relief, his desperate need to confirm she was still alive. She crossed to him, and his arms came around her, pulling her against his blood-soaked chest. He buried his face in her hair, shaking. I thought I lost you, he said roughly. When the bond started to tear, I thought, I know. She held him just as tightly. But we're still here, both of us, because of you. He pulled back enough to look at her. What you did, merging our powers like that shouldn't have been possible. Apparently it is. His smile was brief. We're going to terrify everyone. Good. She touched his face. Let them be afraid. Let them remember what happens when they threaten us. Around them, the surviving nobles watched in silence, some in awe, some in terror, all recognizing that the balance of power had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't just an Alpha King and his guardian anymore. This was something new, something unprecedented, something that made the old bonds look like children playing with toys. Lord Thorn has been captured, Seraphina announced to the room. He's confessed to orchestrating the conspiracy, coordinating with hunters, attempting to assassinate the Alpha King. She paused. Anyone else involved has until dawn to turn themselves in. After that, we hunt you down. All of you. The threat landed like a hammer. Several nobles exchanged nervous glances. A few slipped quietly toward the exits. Let them go, Draven said through the bond. We'll deal with them later. Right now, I need to address the loyal ones, the ones who stayed. He straightened, releasing her reluctantly. Blood dripped from his claws. His war form slowly receded, leaving him human again. Naked, covered in gore, looking like exactly what he was, a king who just fought a war and won. To those who remained loyal, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Thank you. You stood with me when it would have been easier to turn. You fought for this empire when others tried to tear it down. His eyes swept the room. That will be remembered, rewarded. He moved to the throne, sat, looked every inch the ruler he was. But things are going to change, he continued. The old ways nearly destroyed us. The old laws made us vulnerable. Starting now, we do things differently. He gestured to Seraphina. My guardian and I are completely bonded. One life, one power, one rule. Challenge me, you challenge her. Attack her, you attack me. We are the throne, together. The declaration sent ripples through the crowd. Some looked troubled, others resigned. A few actually relieved that someone was finally taking control. Lady Celeste entered from a side door, Lucienne at her heels. She looked exhausted, terrified, grateful. She approached the throne and knelt. I owe the guardian my life, she said clearly, and my son's life. Whatever debt that incurs, I will pay. Draven looked at his sister for a long moment. You were protecting your child. I understand that. He paused. But you also lied to me, conspired against me. Even if you were coerced, I know. The debt is this. You serve her now. His gesture included Seraphina. She is Queen Guardian. Your loyalty is to her first, to me second. Can you accept that? Celeste's eyes widened. Then she looked at Seraphina and nodded slowly. Yes, then rise, and help us rebuild what they tried to destroy. The session ended shortly after. Guards escorted the nobles to their quarters. Healers tended to the wounded. Work crews began clearing the bodies and damage. Seraphina and Draven walked to his chambers in silence, both too exhausted for words. Inside, they collapsed onto the bed together, not bothering to clean the blood and dirt. "We did it," she said into the darkness. "We survived." "Barely." His arm tightened around her. "This was just the opening move, Seraphina. The hunters are still out there. The conspiracy goes deeper than Thorn. We have enemies in places we haven't even looked yet." "I know. And now everyone knows what we can do, what the bond makes possible." He paused. "That makes us a target. The biggest target in the Empire." She rolled to face him, and even exhausted, even terrified, she smiled. "Good. Let them come. We'll be ready." His hand cupped her face. "You really are magnificent, you know that? I learned from the best." They kissed slowly, thoroughly, not with passion, but with the desperate relief of two people who'd stared death in the face and won. When they finally broke apart, Draven's expression turned serious. "Tomorrow, we interrogate Thorn properly, find out who else is involved, where the hunters are getting their weapons, how deep this goes. And then we go hunting." His eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. "No more defense, no more reacting. We take the fight to them. End this before they get another chance to strike." Agreed. They lay there in the darkness, listening to each other breathe, feeling the bond humming between them stronger than ever. Outside, the palace slowly settled, guards changing shifts, healers working through the night, the Empire holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And in the cells beneath the throne room, Minister Thorn sat in chains, smiling despite his broken ribs and shattered plans. Because he knew something they didn't, something he'd kept hidden until the perfect moment. The hunters weren't just organized, they were here. Inside the mountain, hundreds of them, and at dawn when the full moon set and the wolves were at their weakest, they would attack. Not to capture, not to negotiate, but to burn everything to the ground. The real war hadn't even started yet. Dawn broke over Verathon like a wound opening. Seraphina woke to the taste of smoke and the feeling of wrongness crawling through the bond. Draven was already standing at the window, still covered in dried blood from the night before, staring out at the horizon. "What is it?" she asked, sitting up. He didn't turn. "Fire. East Ridge. 3 separate blazes." She crossed to stand beside him, and her breath caught. Orange flames painted the distant mountainside, spreading fast. Too fast. Too organized. "That's not random," she said. "No." His jaw was tight. "It's a signal. For what?" He finally looked at her, and his eyes held the kind of knowledge that came from years of surviving impossible things. "The final assault. They're telling each other it's time. How long do we have?" His smile was bitter. "We're about to find out." The alarm bells started ringing before he finished speaking. Deep, resonant, the sound that meant enemies at the gates. They dressed in silence, pulling on leather and steel with the efficiency of soldiers who'd done this too many times. Seraphina strapped on weapons she'd learned to use through the bond, muscle memory borrowed from Draven's centuries of combat experience. When they emerged into the corridor, chaos greeted them. Guards running, servants fleeing toward the inner sanctum, the smell of smoke growing stronger. Celeste met them halfway to the throne room, already shifted to wolf form, Lucienne cowering behind her legs. "They're inside the mountain," her voice echoed through pack bonds. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They must have been infiltrating for months. "Where?" Draven demanded. "Everywhere. Lower levels, service tunnels, even the guard quarters." She paused. "Draven, they're not just hunters. Some of them are our own people. Wolves who turned. The betrayal cut deeper than silver, deeper than any blade, because it meant the rot had spread further than anyone realized, meant that even now, in this final moment, they couldn't trust anyone. "Get to the sanctum," Draven ordered. "Take Lucy. Seal the doors. Don't open them for anyone except us. What about you? We end this." His hand found Seraphina's. One way or another. They ran toward the throne room, and with each step, the reality of what they faced became clearer. This wasn't a raid. This was an extermination. The hunters had brought everything: silver weapons, poison, fire, and enough bodies to overwhelm even an Alpha King. The throne room was already a battlefield. Loyal guards fought desperately against attackers pouring in from 3 separate entrances. Blood painted the black stone. Bodies piled in corners. the air thick with smoke and screaming. Draven shifted mid-run, his war form exploding outward with a roar that shook the palace. He hit the nearest cluster of hunters like a storm, claws tearing through leather and flesh. Seraphina followed, her hands blazing with green light. She threw power at the enemies, vines erupting from stone to drag them down, light exploding in bursts that sent men flying. But there were too many. For everyone they killed, two more appeared. Through the bond, she felt Draven's realization, felt his calculation of odds, felt him understanding that this was a fight they couldn't win through strength alone. "We need to find the source," he sent. "Someone's coordinating this. Kill the head, the body dies." "Where?" He paused mid-strike, senses extending. Then his eyes snapped to a doorway at the far end of the throne room. "There. I can feel it." Old magic, wrong magic. They fought their way across the room, moving as one unit, his claws and her power combining in ways that made them nearly unstoppable. But nearly wasn't enough. Silver blades found gaps in their defense. Poison arrows grazed skin. They were being worn down by sheer numbers. The doorway led to stairs spiraling down into darkness. Draven hesitated at the threshold, every instinct screaming trap. Seraphina took his hand. "Together." "Together," he agreed. They descended into what had once been the old palace, the ruins beneath the current structure. Ancient stone walls covered in symbols that predated the Empire. The air thick with power that made her skin crawl. At the bottom, a massive chamber opened up. Circular, carved with patterns that hurt to look at. And in the center, standing beside an altar that pulsed with sick green light, was Minister Thorn. He'd escaped. Somehow. The silver chains lay broken at his feet. "Welcome," he said with a smile that belonged on a corpse. "I was hoping you'd come. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down after we burn your palace." "How?" Draven's voice was a growl. "The chains, the guards. You still don't understand." Thorn gestured to the chamber. "This isn't about politics anymore. This isn't even about wolves versus humans. This is about power. Real power. The kind your ancestors buried because they were too weak to use it." "What are you talking about?" The first guardians weren't protectors. They were weapons. Created through blood magic and sacrifice to destroy anything that threatened the old empire. But when the Alpha Kings bound them through the bond, they neutered that power, made it safe, controllable. Thorn's eyes glittered. "I'm simply restoring what was taken. You're insane." "I'm ambitious. There's a difference." He placed his hand on the altar. "This device was built by the first guardian, before the bonds, before the corruption of mercy and compassion. It can break any bond, sever any connection. And with the amount of power you two have been generating, well," he smiled, "it'll tear your souls apart and give me enough energy to level this entire mountain." "You won't get the chance," Seraphina said. She attacked. Green light exploded from her hands, aimed directly at Thorn's heart. But the altar flared, absorbing the power, feeding on it. "Thank you," Thorn said. "Keep going. Every attack makes it stronger." Draven lunged, claws extended, but invisible barriers sprang up, throwing him back. He hit the wall hard enough to crack stone. The bond screamed as distance separated them. The altar pulsed brighter, feeding on their connection, trying to rip it apart. "Stop fighting," Thorn said. "You're only making it worse. The device needs opposing forces, needs you to resist. That's what generates the energy." He paused. "But if you just accept death, it would be quick, almost painless." Seraphina felt Draven struggling to his feet through the bond, felt his pain, his rage, his desperate need to reach her. And she understood what Thorn didn't, what the old texts had never recorded because the writers had been too afraid to see it. The bond wasn't designed to be broken by opposing forces. It was designed to be completed by merging them. That's why partial bonds failed, why resistance killed, because the magic wanted unity, not separation. So she stopped resisting. "Draven," she sent through the bond, "stop fighting. Trust me." "What?" "Just stop. Open yourself completely. No walls, no resistance, nothing." She felt his confusion, his instinct to reject anything that made them vulnerable. But she also felt his trust, earned through days of surviving impossible things together. He stopped fighting the pull, opened himself completely, and Seraphina did the same. The bond, freed from resistance, surged, not pulling them apart, pulling them together. Their consciousnesses merged completely, thoughts and memories and souls flowing into each other until there was no separation at all. Not two people linked, one being experiencing reality through two bodies. The power that generated was apocalyptic. The altar exploded. Thorn screamed as the backlash hit him, burning through his body like acid. The chamber shook. Ancient stones cracked and fell. Seraphina and Draven stood at the center of the destruction, hands linked, eyes glowing the same impossible gold-green, speaking with one voice. "You were wrong," they said. "The bond isn't a weakness. It's evolution." Thorn collapsed, smoke rising from his skin. The device, the altar, it was supposed to break something that can't be broken. They moved toward him, two bodies with one purpose. "You treated us like enemies forced to cooperate, but we chose each other, chose to merge, chose to become something new." Thorn's eyes widened with understanding and terror. "You're not bonded anymore. You're one being. We always were. We just didn't know it yet." The chamber began collapsing in earnest, stone falling from the ceiling, the ancient structure giving way after centuries. They left Thorn there, buried under rubble that had stood for 1,000 years, and climbed back toward the throne room. The fighting had intensified, more hunters pouring in, more loyal guards falling, the balance tipping toward darkness. But when Seraphina and Draven emerged from the stairway, something changed. The air itself seemed to thicken with power. Every wolf in the palace felt it, the completion of a bond that shouldn't have been possible, the birth of something unprecedented. The hunters felt it too, felt the wrongness of facing something that had transcended the rules they thought governed this world. Seraphina and Draven moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, not fighting as two people, fighting as one consciousness directing two bodies with perfect synchronization. Where one struck, the other defended. Where one advanced, the other covered. No gaps, no mistakes, pure efficiency. The hunters broke, not from violence, though there was plenty of that, from fear. The primal recognition that they were fighting something beyond their ability to defeat, something that had looked at death and chosen to become more instead of less. They fled. Those who could. Those who couldn't died quickly. By the time the sun fully cleared the horizon, the palace was theirs again. Bloody, damaged, full of corpses and survivors who'd discovered exactly how much they could endure. Seraphina and Draven stood in the throne room, still linked, still merged, slowly learning how to separate their consciousness again without losing the connection. It was harder than combining had been. Required intention, practice, the deliberate choice to be two instead of one. Finally, they managed it, standing side by side. Individual again, but changed in ways that would take years to fully understand. "Is it over?" Celeste's voice came from the doorway. She stood in human form, Lucien at her side, both covered in soot and blood. Draven looked at his sister. "The immediate threat is over, but the hunters exist beyond our borders. The conspiracy probably extends further than we've discovered. So no, it's not over," he paused. "But we won the battle that mattered. What happens now? Now we rebuild." He looked around the destroyed throne room. "We bury our dead, heal our wounded, and make it clear to everyone that Verathon isn't falling, not today, not ever." The next days were a blur of activity. Bodies cleared, walls repaired, trials held for captured traitors. Some were executed, others imprisoned. A few, those who'd been truly coerced, were pardoned with conditions. The noble houses that had remained loyal were rewarded with lands and titles. Those that had wavered were stripped of power. A new council was formed, smaller and subject to the Alpha King's direct authority. It wasn't democracy, wasn't gentle, but it was stable. And after everything, stability was what the Empire needed most. Seraphina found herself in a role she'd never wanted and couldn't escape. Queen Guardian, co-ruler. The woman bonded to the most dangerous man in the North. People bowed when she passed, sought her judgment, feared her power. She hated it and accepted it in equal measure, because the alternative was abandoning people who needed protection. Abandoning Draven. Abandoning the part of herself that had finally found purpose. 3 weeks after this final battle, She stood on the palace wall at sunset, watching the boundary lands stretch into purple distance. The villages were rebuilding, patrols had been tripled. The hunters had pulled back, regrouping for whatever came next. She felt Draven approaching before she heard him. The bond hummed with his presence, comfortable and constant now. He joined her at the wall, and for a long moment they just stood there, watching the world settle into evening. "Do you regret it?" he asked finally. "Everything that happened, everything you lost." She considered the question honestly. Her old life had been simple, safe, lonely. She'd been hiding from the world, pretending to be less than she was, terrified of the power she'd inherited. "No," she said. "I regret the people who died, the suffering, the violence. But becoming this?" She gestured between them. "Finding you, completing the bond." "No, I don't regret that, even though it cost you your freedom. I was never free before." She looked at him. "I was just a different kind of prisoner, trapped by fear instead of duty." His hand found hers. "I used to think ruling meant being alone, that letting anyone close was weakness, that caring about anything beyond the Empire's survival was a luxury I couldn't afford. And now? Now I know I was wrong." He squeezed her hand. "You make me stronger, not because you follow orders or stay safe, but because you challenge me, force me to be better than I want to be." "That's a terrible compliment. It's the truth." His smile was brief. "You're a pain in my ass and the best thing that's ever happened to me. Both can be true." She laughed, actual laughter that felt like the first real breath she'd taken in weeks. "I'll take it." They stood there as stars began appearing in the darkening sky. The bond hummed between them, settled and strong. Not pulling, not demanding, just there. A constant reminder that neither of them would ever be truly alone again. "What would you have done?" she asked. "If the bond had failed? If we died in that chamber?" His expression grew serious. "I would have burned the world, killed anyone who stood between me and revenge, become the monster everyone always feared I was. And that's why it didn't fail." "What do you mean?" "Because you're not a monster. You're a king who learned that strength comes from connection, not isolation." She turned to face him fully. "The old bonds failed because the Alpha Kings treated their guardians as tools, things to be used and controlled. You never did that. Even at the beginning, even when you were being an arrogant ass, you saw me as a person, an equal. I saw you as dangerous." "Same thing," she smiled. "You recognized that I had power and agency. That's why the bond could complete. Why we could merge instead of tear apart. So what? We succeeded because I'm not as much of a bastard as my ancestors?" "Basically." He pulled her close, and she went willingly, fitting against him like they'd been designed for exactly this. His chin rested on top of her head, and through the bond she felt his contentment, his peace, things she'd never felt from him before. "The Empire will never accept us fully," he said quietly. "There will always be factions that think we're too powerful, too dangerous. They'll plot and scheme and try to drive wedges between us. Let them try. We'll have to make hard choices, sacrifice people we care about to save people we don't know, get our hands bloody doing things that haunt us. I know. And there's no going back, no walking away. This is forever. Until one of us dies, and then we both do." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm not afraid of forever, not with you. You should be." His voice was rough. "I'm going to fail you, disappoint you, make mistakes that cost lives. I'm not the hero in this story, Seraphina. I'm the king who does whatever it takes to survive." "I don't need a hero." She touched his face. "I need a partner. Someone who understands that survival sometimes means becoming something you hate. Someone who carries the weight so others don't have to." She paused. "Someone who'll stand beside me when the world burns and help me rebuild from the ashes." His smile was small but genuine. "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between dying and refusing to stay dead." He kissed her then, slow, deep, not with passion but with promise, the kind that meant something more permanent than words could express. When they finally broke apart, the full moon had risen, painting the palace in silver light. Below them, wolves began to howl, not in mourning or warning, in recognition. The pack acknowledging their alpha and his mate, the bond that had saved them all. "Come on," Draven said, taking her hand. We have a kingdom to run. They walked back into the palace together, and with each step, Seraphina felt the weight of what they'd built settling onto her shoulders. Not crushing, just present. The constant reminder of responsibility, of duty, of lives depending on choices she'd make. It should have terrified her. Once upon a time, it would have. The girl who'd hidden in a cottage, brewing tea and pretending the magic in her blood didn't exist, would have run screaming from this life. But that girl was gone, burned away by silver and fire and the choice to save a wolf cub in a trap. In her place stood someone new, someone who'd looked at impossible odds and decided they were negotiable, someone who'd bound her soul to a king and discovered that power shared was power multiplied, someone who'd learned that true strength wasn't about dominating others. It was about knowing when to stand firm and when to merge, when to fight alone and when to trust someone else to carry half the burden. The throne room had been repaired. New stones, fresh tapestries, but the bloodstains had been left intentionally. A reminder of what it cost to rule, of what they'd survived. Draven sat on the throne, and this time Seraphina didn't stand behind him. She stood beside him. Not on a second throne. Just beside. Equal. Partner. The visual statement clear to anyone with eyes. The evening assembly gathered, smaller now, missing faces. But the ones who remained looked different, harder, more honest. Violence had a way of stripping away pretense, leaving only what was real. "My lords and ladies," Draven began. His voice carried the weight of everything they'd survived. "We've been through hell, lost people we loved, discovered betrayals that cut to the bone, had to make choices that will haunt us until we die." The room was silent, listening, waiting. "But we're still here," he continued, "still standing, still fighting, and that means something. It means we're stronger than they thought, stronger than we thought." He paused, looking around the room, meeting eyes, letting them see him fully. "I'm not going to pretend the future will be easy. The hunters are still out there. Other kingdoms are watching, wondering if we're weak. There will be more fights, more sacrifices, more nights where we question if we're doing the right thing." His hand found Seraphina's, squeezed. "But we face it together. Not just me and the Guardian. All of us. This empire, this pack. We stand or we fall as one, and I'd rather fall fighting beside people I trust than sit safe and alone." The words hung in the air, raw, honest, the kind of truth that cut both ways. Then Lord Blackwood stood, an older noble who'd lost 2 sons in the fighting. "My lord," he paused, choosing words carefully, "what you're describing, unity through shared trauma, that's not enough to build a lasting peace." "You're right," Draven agreed. "That's why we're also building through shared prosperity. The lands confiscated from traitors will be redistributed to loyal houses, including yours, Lord Blackwood. 2 estates on the southern border, rich farmland. I believe your family has always wanted to expand in that direction." The Lord's eyes widened. "That's generous. It's practical. I need strong families on the borders, families with reason to defend them. You've proven your loyalty. Now I'm giving you the means to profit from it." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was new. Alpha Kings didn't negotiate, didn't share power willingly, but Draven was offering something different, a partnership based on mutual benefit instead of fear. Slowly, other nobles began speaking up, asking questions, making requests, negotiating terms that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. And Draven answered. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but always with explanations, with reasoning, treating them like allies instead of subjects. Seraphina watched it happening and felt something shift in the room. The old empire had been built on dominance. The new one was being built on something more complicated, more sustainable. Fear tempered with respect, power balanced by accountability. It wouldn't last forever, nothing did, but it might last long enough to matter, to change how the next generation thought about ruling and being ruled. The assembly ended as the moon reached its peak. The nobles filed out, talking among themselves, processing the changes. Some looked hopeful, others skeptical, all of them aware that the world had fundamentally shifted. Draven sagged slightly as the last one left, exhaustion showing through the cracks. "That was harder than fighting," he muttered. "Welcome to ruling," Seraphina said. Turns out killing people is easier than convincing them to work together. Profound. I have my moments. They walked to their chambers, and this time, the guards at every intersection didn't flinch, didn't look away. They met Draven's eyes, acknowledged Seraphina with nods that held real respect, small changes, but changes that added up. Inside their rooms, they finally allowed themselves to drop the masks, to be tired, hurt, human again instead of forces of nature. Seraphina collapsed on the bed face first. Through the bond, she felt Draven's amusement, felt him moving around the room, securing weapons, checking windows, the ritual of a soldier who'd survived too many assassination attempts to ever truly relax. "Come to bed," she mumbled into the pillow. "In a minute. Now. I can feel you being paranoid through the bond. It's exhausting." His laugh was soft. "Fine." He joined her on the bed and she rolled to face him. In the candlelight, the scars on his chest were visible, old ones from years of battle, new ones from recent fights, a map of survival written in damaged flesh. She traced one gently. "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore. Physical pain fades. It's the other kind that lingers." "What other kind?" "The knowledge that you were right, that I failed people, that my choices cost lives." He closed his eyes. "I keep seeing their faces, the guards who died, the servants caught in crossfire, the wolves who turned because they saw no other option. You can't save everyone. I know, doesn't make it easier." "No, it doesn't." She continued tracing the scar. "But you saved who you could, and you learned from it. That's all anyone can do." "Is it enough?" "It has to be, because the alternative is giving up, letting the guilt consume you until you're paralyzed." She met his eyes. "And then they win. The traitors, the hunters, everyone who wanted to break you. They win by making you break yourself." His hand covered hers. "When did you become the wise one?" "When I bonded to an idiot who needed someone to keep him sane." Fair. They lay there in comfortable silence, not sleeping, just existing together, feeling the bond humming between them. Steady, strong, the foundation they'd built everything else on. Tomorrow would bring new problems, new threats, new impossible choices. But tonight, they had this: each other. The knowledge that whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. And somewhere in the darkness, in places they couldn't see yet, the next storm was already gathering. Because power always attracted opposition, safety always bred complacency, and the wheel of history kept turning regardless of who got crushed beneath it. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, they were alive. Together. And for now, that was enough. Seraphina drifted toward sleep, and in that space between waking and dreaming, she saw it all clearly. The path they'd walked, the price they'd paid, the thing they'd become. Not heroes, not villains, just two people who'd refused to break when the world demanded it, who'd looked at impossible odds and decided to rewrite the rules instead of dying by them. And if that wasn't enough to build a future on, nothing was. The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was Draven's arm tightening around her waist, the bond singing contentment through every nerve, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they'd survive it the same way they'd survived everything else. Together, as one soul stretched between two bodies, as the thing the old world couldn't imagine and the new world couldn't destroy. As proof that sometimes mercy and strength weren't opposites. They were the same thing wearing different faces. And the kings who understood that didn't just survive, they changed everything.